900 hours coming to you from the bright city here in Johannesburg, Jumbo, Africa. This is the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Presley. We'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. Now today we focus on a number of court cases against the African National Congress by its own disgruntled party members who want to nullify the outcomes of their provincial conferences in KZN, Free State. You've seen all these happening, Kendall.
Yep.
That's why we're asking you that question.
Yeah, not excluding Northwest, Eastern Cape and so on and so forth. We want to find out from you, what implications will these court cases have on the 54th National Elected Conference?
It's kicking off, of course, this weekend. So let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC News. This one from Vuyo says, these so-called court cases are trying to correct the wrongdoings or manipulations of the ANC processes. I think they will not impact negatively. Already the branches have spoken. Cyril Ramaphosa for president, says Vuyo.
Mahafa Noel says, Newsroom, I don't see ANC elected conference happening. Anyway, I wish them the best.
Well, we're also conducting a poll today because there are corruption revelations that Steinhoff may have been run like a Ponzi scheme. Now that's a private company. Their shares fell by more than 80%, and they've severely damaged investments as well as pension funds. Apparently is in the spotlight.
The country's reputation is also in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons again. Now we're asking you this question: do we as South Africans care more about public sector corruption than private sector corruption?
So far, 149 votes in, 68% are saying yes, we do care more about the public sector corruption. 32% says no.
Let's see what's being said on social media about this. Michael Big M Stoller says, yes, most people do. WMC, they said that term doesn't exist simply because it was describing crimes committed by white people in the corporate world. DA and Musi Maimane were going on about Jay-Z and millions spent on Nkanda. How about the billions involved in the Steinhoff fraud? Hashtag KPMG.
This one from Telele says, we've obsessed with corruption in the public sector because it is us, the people, who put those corrupt leaders in power, as opposed to the private sector. Those are some of your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we also have a sporting question.
Absolutely. Amajita have done what we wanted them to do. They've made it 3 out of 3 and advanced to the COSAFA Cup Under-20 semi-finals. Now, I want to find out from you, is Bafana's future looking bright?
Can we get some strikers from Amajita, at least?
Yeah, Foster's doing extremely well.
Yes, Eugene says we can't guarantee that because we don't know if those players will make it to the professional level. Who can forget the likes of Tabiso Malatsi and Jabu Pule, etc.?
Yeah, Jabu Pule did well for himself in the senior ranks, and Taumlambo says yes, it might be bright if the coach gives them a chance.
There you have it. Those are your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines.
For the position of chairperson, I officially declare Comrade Ace Magashule.
Ace Magashula's 25-year reign as the strong man of the ANC chairperson in the Free State continues as he was re-elected unopposed. Remaining with ANC in fighting the bid to nullify the ANC Eastern Cape Elective Conference and efforts to stop the ANC in Mpumalanga from going to the ANC National Elective Conference are in court today. And Scopa calls for an urgent investigation over the Steinhoff saga. Those are your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendo Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, quite a lot, and mostly about football. Yes, we've got a little cricket on the go, but tell you what, it's going to be about football, especially because Amajita are doing so well out in Zambia. We're going to be bringing you news about that, as well as how Mamelodi Sundowns will probably be trying to make sure they don't repeat last year's mistakes when they've got all these games in hand and go up against Maritzburg United tomorrow. And of course, we're going to forget how Manchester City fans are ecstatic with the UEFA Champions League quarter-final draw, as well as Barcelona will be playing Chelsea, and Real Madrid will be up against a formidable PSG. All this and more I have for you later on in the sports at 10:40. But now it's back to Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Of course, top story this hour. Ace Magashule's 25-year reign as the ANC chairperson for the Free State looks set to continue after he was re-elected unopposed at the Provincial Elective Conference in Paris last night. Former Deputy Chairperson Thabo Manyoni was expected to challenge Magashule, but he declined the nomination as he is boycotting the conference along with other disgruntled members. Manyoni has now been replaced by Paseka Nompondo. The rest of the top 5 leaders were also re-elected unopposed.
For the position of chairperson, I officially declare Comrade Ace Magashule the provincial chairperson.
Meanwhile, ANC NEC member David Mashlobo has welcomed the re-election of Ace Magashule as the chairperson of the Free State. Mashlobo also weighed in on the court case facing the ANC Free State leadership.
The intention is to annul this process, but also attempts are being made to bar the province of Free State from participating in the national conference. Inasmuch as the former PEC is cited, but ANC as an organization has been cited in full in the documents. And the matters are in the good hands of the lawyers. We must be able to reiterate our position that we frown upon members of the ANC whose first point of call is to resolve internal matters through the court. ANC doors from all levels are always available to engage on issues, to deal with our own issues. But we know it's a constitutional democracy. We can't say members must not go there, but we dispersuade them, discourage them from doing so. But now that we've reached that particular point, the matter is going to be defended by the organization, and the necessary paperwork is being prepared, and we're very confident that the matter will be adjudicated, because we don't want anything to impact on the most important work of the ANC, which is the 54th National Conference that is starting on the 16th to the 20th of December. We know that the NEC have done whatever is possible, human possible, to listen to comrades in various provinces. We're deployed, and we made decisions.
Remaining with the ANC infighting, an urgent court application by the ANC presidential hopeful Matthew Sposa to stop the Mpumalanga branches that nominated Comrade Unity for the ANC top 6 positions from attending the party's national conference is expected to be heard in the High Court in Johannesburg today. The applicants have taken the ANC at Luthuli House, the Mpumalanga ANC, as well as the provincial chair David Mabuza to court ahead of this weekend's national elective conference. Some 233 branches nominated Unity during their branch meetings after sources said that Mabuza reportedly instructed branches not to choose any candidate but write Unity on the leadership nomination forms. The ANC Secretary General Zweli Mkhize says the organization has identified certain tendencies that are creeping into the organization that needs to be uprooted. Speaking to the SABC, Mkhize said all the ANC needs to do is to ensure that the conference addresses all these issues and uproot the causes of division.
Mkhize says differences within the ANC needs to be managed and the party needs to find a way to resolve the disputes. He says members of the ANC need to persuade each other to settle their differences because it's in the interest of the ANC to go to a successful conference.
We must all take responsibility for what happens in the organization. If at the moment we have divisions that are showing in public, but we believe that those divisions have to be managed. Some of them arise from the way we manage issues. Some of them are not as fundamental and ideological as to really call them fundamental differences. So these are issues of how we're managing issues, and so I think they can still be managed and contained. But yes, if you look back over the years, there are tendencies that we have identified that are creeping into the organization that we need to uproot, and we've said so, and all that we need to be able to do is to ensure that as the conference comes, it addresses all those issues and we uproot the causes of the divisions.
He called for the Commission of Inquiry into the state capture, saying it should expose everything.
We need to ensure that there's a commission of inquiry that exposes everything. So all those emails, all those allegations, all those names of individuals, all those companies must go in through that process. Then South Africans know exactly what we're talking about in this case.
He says the ANC should learn from the outcomes of such a commission and make sure that in future it prevents anything of this nature. Mkhize lamented the fact that the outcomes of the conference must be of building and uniting the ANC, making sure that it emerges with a much better image. Lehana Tsotetsi, SABC News.
Parliament's Oversight Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, has announced it intends to call the executives of global retailer Steinhoff before Parliament early in the new year. Parliament is currently on its holiday recess. SCOPA's chairperson, Themba Godi, has also called on the Revenue Services, the South African Reserve Bank, the independent regulatory body for auditors, as well as the Financial Services Board to urgently investigate Steinhoff. As you can recall, shares in Steinhoff fell by more than 80% last week after the company said that accounting irregularities had come to light. It announced the resignation of its CEO and postponed the release of financial results. The share price started to recover yesterday after 200 billion rand was wiped off the market value of the company. Now, the Federation of South Africa, FEDUSA, has assured its members and pensioners that their funds are fully protected. FEDUSA and its affiliates, PSA, SAO, NAPTOSA, HOSPERSA, as well as SUB2, met with the Public Investment Corporation yesterday. Now, they discussed the alleged massive corruption, the fraud and gross negligence concerning accounting irregularities at the retailer Steinhoff. Now, to talk to us about this, we are joined by FEDUSA's General Secretary, Mr. Dennis George. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning.
What was your first reaction when you saw the share price of retailer Steinhoff jump from about 80%, more than 80%, yesterday it was 89, day before it was 89% drop in share price?
Yeah, look, this is the biggest, fraud and corruption case in the history of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And that is why we've called an urgent meeting with the PIC to discuss, the magnitude of this first, and then secondly, what steps we will FEDUSA take, to try to work together with the other social partners to deal with this particular scourge of corruption in the private sector, and to also look at, what could be the potential impact on jobs, because this particular company employ about 120,000 workers across a number of jurisdictions, including the main listing is in Frankfurt, and then the secondary listing is in Johannesburg. So you're dealing with a lot of tax regimes, you're dealing with a lot of different legislation, but at least there's one accounting standard that we all have to work according to.
Yes.
And the conclusion of the meeting concluded, first of all, to say that we don't understand why would the CEO resign, but the chief financial officer stays there. And the chairperson is still there, because those are the three people that actually work very closely together. And then you have your audit committee, you have your risk committee, you have all these committees that's supposed to be accountable. And then the company decided very strangely that they want to be the judge in their own case. So they appointed PricewaterhouseCoopers to do an investigation, because Deloitte refused to sign their audited financial statements, which gave rise to the fact that the CEO resigned. So FEDUSA believe, and the PIC support our view, that there must be a total independent investigation, because nobody can be a judge in his own case. Secondly, we also think it is very critical, and we have sent an email this morning to Europe to our International Trade Union Confederation, where we've asked them to be and get in contact with the tax authorities in Germany to see if they can't speed up the process of this investigation that started in 2015, to at least if they can bring a preliminary report out, you know, because it's critical that we need to look after the jobs of people, because more uncertainty there is, you know, the more risk we bring about for the jobs to be lost. And then we look at also at the impact. Now, the strategy of the PIC, you know, was quite useful in this case because it's built on the principle that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So about 1% of the assets of the PIC has been exposed.
Only 1%?
Yes, we're talking about between 10 and 15 billion. And we remember we also talk about value of a share, you know. And that's the reason why we feel comfortable, at least that the exposure wasn't too big. And then we look at another aspect, and that is the situation of our members and how the pension fund that they are receiving. And I'm just glad to announce to everybody to remain calm, because the government employees belong to a defined benefit fund.
What does that mean?
Straightforward English is, when you join the pension fund, it's according to the rules. So they might say, look, when you go on retirement after 25 years of service, you'll get 60% or 70% from your final year's salary. And then there's also a third that you can take in terms of, you know, your cash amount. So our members are totally protected. It's the people that have a defined contribution that is exposed to the market. So if a person wants to go on retirement and the fund took a knock now, then your pension fund would be less. But more important for us, that the PIC is a long-term investor, you know, and we feel it is totally unnecessary for CEOs to behave so unethically, you know, and we don't know what is the motivation for that.
So are you then suggesting that more people should be held accountable for this mess?
Of course. Look, remember, a company, it's an organization with structures, with various committees. And therefore, you know, a person, that's the reason why you have a company, so that it's not a one-man show. And therefore, the company can't decide who's guilty and who's not guilty and decide the terms of reference for the investigation, because there's public money involved. And secondly, FEDUSA have also started to consult with our attorneys. And
yes,
and our attorneys, and what we want to start filing with the High Court in South Africa is we want to have, number one, the CEO, because he admitted in the email to his colleagues that he made the biggest mistake. And we want him to be declared a delinquent director. And then we want to go after the other directors one by one. And that declaration of a delinquent director has serious consequences for an individual.
Very fancy words are being utilized: accounting irregularities. Some would even call it white-collar crime. So it sounds very good. But is this just pure theft or corruption?
Corruption is theft. And I can give you an example. In the United States, Mr. Murdoch was also the darling of the investment community, and he could charm investors about everything. And he did similar kind of things where they undervalue certain assets and mislead people deliberately, because if you mislead people intentionally, you know, you're committing a serious crime. And that person is currently serving 100 years in prison. So severely do the US jurisdiction system take these things. And for us in South Africa, I think we need to jack up our game, because when you want to deal with capitalism, you want to deal with markets, you need to have solid institutions, and we must strengthen our institutions to prosecute these people.
Now, we are conducting a poll today, and we want to find out from people, are people more concerned about public sector corruption or corporate corruption? And so far, you can see the numbers there, 187 are coming in, and 69% of people saying that we are more concerned about public sector corruption than private sector. Is that perhaps a focus that needs to shift, do you think, Mr. George?
No, look, I think we must tackle corruption whether it takes place in the private sector or whether it takes place in the public sector. But what makes the corruption in the private sector so more severe? It makes our country so more unequal society, because the management on the top, they want to take huge amounts of salary out of the company, and then they want to suppress wages for other people, and that's what creating this unequal society. And then they are very fast on the trigger. The minute when the company doesn't perform well, they want to start to retrench workers. And some companies are also not, like they have I don't care attitude. They don't want to give young people opportunity to do a learnership. They don't want to take on apprenticeships. It's always the situation is bad. And the point is basically this thing of greed, especially corporate greed, we must deal with it.
Mr. George, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. The good news is that pensioners' funds are protected.
Safe.
There you have it. That was Mr. Dennis George, Producer's General Secretary in studio. Let's now do some housekeeping and take a look at our picture of the day that comes from Sandy Garden. And it says here, look at that picture there. The tornado went through the Vaal Marina on the Vaal Dam on Monday evening. Roofs were blown off. Trees were uprooted. Walls were down. Lots of damage to property. I've seen it in some of the suburbs as well. But of course, some of those trees being uprooted. Look at that picture there for you. Our comment of the day comes from Gauteng Weather. Weather SA structures overturned from possible tornado at the Vaal Marina with Monday storm damage estimated in the millions. That's our comment of the day for you. Let's now go to our courts today, and we begin here in Gauteng. The Terror Twins, Brandon Lee and Tony Lee Tulsi, are expected to appear in the High Court in Johannesburg for their pre-trial hearing. They were arrested in July last year for plotting a series of attacks on Jewish and the U.S. Embassy. Staying here in Gauteng, Nkosi and Bongani Masombuka are expected to appear in the Benoni Magistrates Court on charges of the botched hijacking and murder of the Rhythm City actor Dumi Masilela. Masilela died in hospital in August after he was shot in an attempted hijacking just outside of Johannesburg. On to the Western Cape now. A convicted international weapons smuggler is due to appear in the Cape Town Magistrates Court. Now, he was arrested in Cape Town last Friday. 75-year-old Gijs Koevenhoven had been on the run from authorities for 2 years. And in Limpopo, the trial of a self-proclaimed prophet who allegedly sprayed his congregation with doom insecticide is set to continue at the Nabom Spruit Magistrates Court. Latebo Rabolago has been charged with assault with the intent to do grievous bodily harm. Now, those are your court stories. We'll keep you updated of those and as we continue during the course of the program. So stay tuned. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back after that.
Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma is a South African politician and anti-apartheid activist. She obtained her medical doctorate at the University of Bristol. She was part of the Gender Advisory Committee of CODESA, former Minister of Health, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Minister of Home Affairs, and during her time at Home Affairs delivered incredible results. The ministry was awarded for service excellence and rated as employer of choice for 2010 to 2011. The first woman in 50 years to chair the African Union Commission, her term ended this year, 2017.
I'm just very grateful to all the member states for having entrusted me with this responsibility of their organization.
As chairperson, she changed the entire environment in Addis Ababa and in Africa. She brought a degree of professionalism to the AU bureaucracy. Nkosazana initiated a flagship policy, the Agenda 2063, which sets out what Africa is going to look like in half a century from now.
Are we ready for the revolution? Change everything that must be changed. I'm asking because for us to change everything that must be changed, we must have cadres. We must be united. We must unite society behind that program. So I won't deal with everything that's here, but it also says it's full equality and freedom.
We are ready.
Now, Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts, SCOPA, says it will only call the executives of the retail giant Steinhoff early in the new year, as Parliament is currently on recess. SCOPA chairperson Themba Gowdy has also called on the South African Revenue Service, the Reserve Bank, the independent regulatory body for auditors, as well as the Financial Services Board to urgently investigate Steinhoff. Shares in Steinhoff fell by more than 80% after the company revealed accounting irregularities. Meanwhile, the Trade Union Federation COSATU has expressed its anger and sadness over the reported accounting irregularities at Steinhoff. Earlier, we spoke to COSATU's Secretary General Becky Njalinjali.
We feel very, very angry about what happens. We're asking many questions as to where was the oversight. In fact, we don't know what has happened up to this stage. That's why we fully support the investigation by those who are responsible for oversight. We're happy in terms of the FSB come out quickly and said, we're going to investigate. We need to know what is going to be happening. But in all these scenarios, what is being looked at is about investment. It's not about jobs. Nobody talks about the impact of jobs, what will happen with the value of the pensioners, and who is responsible for that matter. In that context, is restrictive in a sense that you can't just go out and say this needed to be done without knowing exactly what has happened. There are people calling about laying charges of corruption and etc. But really it's difficult to go to that an extent to say somebody has done something criminally wrong without knowing.
Now, are these so-called accounting irregularities perhaps also linked to corporate gangsterism, you think?
It's difficult to say. I mean, this is not, I mean, when the finances collapsed in the USA sometimes back, many questions were asked, what has happened? So in this kind of a system, in the capitalist system, many of this work or incident happens from time to time. So it's about the question of the system itself, the question of chasing money, the question of investing in speculative investment, of looking for higher returns. And there's high risk that goes with it.
Is corruption in the private sector minute, or is this perhaps the tip of the iceberg?
I think we may say it is the tip of the iceberg. In terms of the competition commissions, since I think 2010, there's been a lot that is coming to the fore in terms of how the corporate sectors has been doing some corruption, but they downplay it. Sometimes they call it collusion and etc. and etc. But to ordinary people, is pure corruption when people come together, as you may term it, kind of gangsterism, and decide as to what is the way forward, how to manipulate the system, and get away with it.
Now, you talked about jobs earlier. Now, Steinhoff is a multinational company. What sort of jobs are we talking about? South African jobs or internationally?
Look, we were worried about what we see here at home. We don't know what are the system overseas, in particular in Germany and etc. But they think they have a good comprehensive social security, so they can look after those that might be affected negatively. Here at home, that if you lose your job, you're almost on your own. There is no kind of security that can be given to. So we're looking at home, we're looking to the JD Group, we're looking to the Pepco stores in the terms of the retail, we're looking to the timber sectors where Steinhoff Africa, region is concerned. So we're looking to the jobs here, but we're looking to the pension investment that has been in there. Though at least there's some kind of comfort, we don't know to what an extent in terms of the PIC. Because in the PIC, the GPF give money to government, and government has been giving guarantees in terms of those investments. We think, as we read it in the newspaper, that those investment, those pensioners will be still secure, which is a good kind of comfort. But I think a lot needed to be investigated.
So workers are not at risk of losing their pension at this stage?
The PIC, that is not all of them. I mean, there might be many other pensions that have invested in Steinhoff. So we don't know the extent of the damage, but we're deeply worried.
What would you like to see those who are implicated in this particular scandal? We know now that the CEO stepped down thus far.
We think they have to take some responsibility in terms of recouping some of the money from their own other investment. They might have seen it coming, they might have benefited in a long run before this thing collapsed. To us, it looked like the Ponzi schemes that other people might have benefited when the shares were going up. If you sell your shares when it was very, very high, you could have an early Christmas in dealing with those particular issues. But those who remain investing are the ones that are really bleeding in terms of, it's like a scheme when it collapses when you are still inside. You feel the negative. But if you have taken your money out earlier, I mean, you are lucky to have done it. We think it has been investigated. If there's any kind of proof that people are guilty, I think that some charges has to be laid against them.
And when we talk about charges, we're not talking just about top management. We're talking about everybody that's involved in the chain, as you
exactly
indicated.
Whether it comes to the auditors that they have turned a blind eye, to any other people who got the oversight, including the board. I mean, the board are paid to look after this company. If they saw it coming, but they turn a blind eye, they must be accountable.
Now, SCOPA, Parliament Standing Committee on Public Accounts, now will call the company to account in January. Are you confident in the process that will unfold from there?
I think it was worth for the SCOPA to convene. It could not wait for January. In our view, there have been times when during this recess, something has to be done. People have to come and get it while it's still hot in terms of what has happened in relation to those particular issues. SCOPA, yes, they have raised some other issues in some investigation, but they're almost toothless in our view. They can investigate, but some other people have to take the responsibility to get people charged in dealing with those. So don't want to undermine the role that they played, but I think they don't move with the speed it desires.
So you think it's a little too late?
Yeah.
That was Becky and Jalinjali a little bit earlier. Now, last week was a very, very poor week for corporate South Africa, which is often quick to criticize poor governance and corruption in the public sector. Steinhoff International Holdings, NV, their shares extended losses to more than 88% since the start of an accounting scandal and fell even further to 89% after Moody's lowered its ratings 4 notches into sub-investment grade for the company. But there was some good news. Yesterday, shares jumped as much as 40%. Now, to talk to us about the Steinhoff debacle, we are joined by Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, the SPG. Professor, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
I would like to get your first reaction. And have you ever seen a drop like that in one day where shares fell by almost 90%?
Well, Elvis, if you and I had been talking a week or so ago, I would have found it hard to believe that the big political stories, such as the ANC conference, could be pushed out of the headlines by a business story. And that's, in fact, what's happened in the past few days. So it's enjoyed, I think, all the necessary attention and focus on what has happened, indeed, at Steinhoff. And I think the important point is for us now to interrogate what has happened and to see what needs to be done.
Talking about interrogation, now, do we know exactly what led to the crash first and foremostly? Because there are reports that the company was run like a Ponzi scheme. And what is the background story to the Steinhoff's unfolding?
Well, if we go
from grace, some would say.
Well, Elvis, if we go back a week or so when the story broke, it appears that it was the auditors who then, and that was Deloitte's, who refused to sign off the accounts. And that precipitated a resignation by the CEO, Marcus Euster, and that started the ball rolling on the market. There were obviously some warning signs before, but it didn't appear as if they were registering very much in the market. So it certainly didn't all happen overnight. There were some warning signs along the way, but they were not interpreted correctly, or perhaps the right conclusions were not drawn as to what might be looming here. So I think that was the immediate trigger, was when the auditors a week or so ago declined to sign off the accounts.
What impact will this now have on pension funds, and will there be any job losses, you think?
Well, I think there is if you bear in mind that, of course, Steinhoff employs about 120,000 persons, that means that there is something here at stake. So how this matter is handled is quite important, because you don't want to put those jobs at risk if you can avoid it. In regard to the pension funds, you've already had answers along the lines of what the PIC stance is, that there are some shock absorbers built in there. So it's not necessarily a worst case scenario. But quite clearly, there will be losses for certain stakeholders, and these will have to be, will have to be addressed.
Now, Professor, we often criticize poor governance and corruption in the public sector, but what does it say about governance in the corporate sector? And could we probably nail this down to corporate gangsterism?
Well, I think it certainly says that corporate governance is as important as indeed public or indeed political governance is. And this is an example of where obviously things have gone pear-shaped in a very bad way, and we need to unpack what happened, who is responsible, and what action has to be taken. I think there are two levels, though, I think is quite important. And one of your previous interviewers spoke about the need for calm, and I think important point is at two levels. The first is, what is the remedial action that the company can take in order to turn the situation around, whether it sells non-core assets or talks to its creditors to buy time in order to implement a turnaround strategy which will rebuild the investor confidence, because that's what a lot of stakeholders and shareholders want. They want the share price to improve.
Yes.
The second is to unpack what happened, who is to blame, and to take action against such people, whether it's under the Companies Act or whether it's it's the Financial Services Board, the Reserve Bank, and later on perhaps even SCOPA. But the fact is there is a regulatory framework that needs to be implemented here, and indeed one must ask the question, who has been asleep at the wheel here? I mean, how did this get to this particular situation, such a worst case scenario as we've seen with Steinhoff? So I think that's the second part of the response, in order to manage and also have a degree of damage control over what has happened at Steinhoff.
There's always lessons to be learned. Now, moving forward, how does corporate SA ensure that this type of malfeasance does not occur again, and what lessons can we then learn?
Well, I think the important point here is that even here, when you look at the current Steinhoff situation, you're dealing with some facts, some fears, some suspicions. It's the tip of the iceberg, what lies below the water. Now, there are checks and balances in the corporate world. There's the Companies Act. There are other forms of legislation. We need to ensure that that these policemen of the marketplace haven't fallen asleep. I think that's very important. But secondly, this is not a good commentary on the level of ethics in the private sector. And if we want to build confidence in a system which we look to create jobs, to invest, to improve our standards of living, it's very important that this kind of situation is addressed and identified well in advance, and that if there has to be remedial action, it is taken quickly, and not when you're faced with such a dramatic situation, which brings discredit on the system as a whole. So I think that there is strong reputational risk here that needs to be borne in mind, and I think all businesses need to bear that in mind and draw the necessary lessons from this experience.
South Africa just emerged from a technical recession. We have some warnings from some ratings agencies for the future. Of course, we don't know where the economy stands in relation to a fuel price that just went up with 79 cents. What impact will this scandal have on the South African economy in general, and looking forward to 2018?
I think it's hard to say. I mean, certainly I've used the analogy of earthquakes and the Richter scale. Where would this feature on the corporate Richter scale? Is it a 6? Is it a 7? Is it an 8? And I'm sure that the viewers will make up their own mind. I think it's pretty high. So it's clearly going to register. A lot will depend on those two strategies I spoke about. What can the company do to turn the situation around and to win the confidence of investors back, if it can? What strategies will it implement to do that? But secondly, also what action is taken to identify who is to blame, who is to be held accountable, and whether we can improve transparency. You know, it's light that is the best policeman. And a lot of this has happened because there wasn't enough transparency, and where there was transparency, the warning signals were not fully interpreted. So I think that's a very important lesson that we need to carry forward, because really in South Africa we have enormous challenges next year, and we want to know that both government and the private sector are going to be operating effectively so that we can resolve those challenges and not have to deal with a situation like this.
Does the ANC conference, elective conference starting this Friday, have anything to do with how the economy will perform next year?
It's a game changer, I think. I think everyone's agreed it's a game changer. A lot will depend on the outcome, and there will be certain economic consequences depending on what happens. And so I think you and I will no doubt be talking again soon.
Professor, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in
you.
studio. That was Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business and Governance, the SBG. It's time now to take a look at your newspapers from around the globe, and let's see what is trending. We start off in New York. The Big Apple, the New York Times reports that emboldened by President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli president, paid the first visit to the European Union headquarters by an Israeli prime minister in 22 years yesterday to seek similar endorsement from the 28-nation bloc. Then we move to Australia, where the Australian says that the opposition leader Bill Shorten has mocked Malcolm Turnbull as the malspanner, or the malspanner in the chief, over his refusal to back a constitutionally enshrined Indigenous voice in Parliament. Now that is a very interesting story. And finally, in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that Jerusalem might be the capital of Israel, but the United States is still hard-pressed to say that it is actually part of the state of Israel. Those are your newspapers from around the globe. Let's now take a break. We'll be right back. We continue our focus on the malfeasance at Steinhoff. They call it the accounting irregularities. What do you call it? Let me know what's on your mind, and is there too much focus perhaps only on the private sector instead of the private sector? I'll get your thoughts after this.
I think winter is definitely one of those seasons where you can really show off your sartorial choices. You can start from a single layer of a shirt, actually starting with thermals, build it up with the shirts. You can have beautiful knits over the shirts, like we've done with Jay.
This film tells the story of a very, very significant political figure in the struggle for freedom in South Africa, who happened to be a woman. She was Nelson Mandela's wife.
The exhibition is an exploration into black femininity. Tabitha is a woman of colour, and she is exploring the historical exploitation of the black female body.
Newtown Junction Mall hosted an epic contest in the cold where 3 top South African graffiti artists battled it out for the opportunity to become the Newtown Graffiti Face-Off Master.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
The African National Congress's national leaders have endorsed the Free State ANC elective conference, which re-elected Ace Magashule unopposed, saying that the gathering was held within the spirit of the African National Congress. Now, this while disgruntled party members are preparing to head to court to try and nullify the conference and interdict all the provincial delegates from attending the National Elective Conference this coming weekend. Now, to talk to us about this and more, we are joined by political analyst Professor Samadoda Fikeni from UNISA. Professor, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning to you and your viewers.
First and foremost, I would like to find out from you, what do you make of the outcome of the ANC Free State elective conference?
Well, it was a given outcome, because if the opposing party is not attending the conference, having stated their grievance, it would simply be a matter of returning Ace Makhashule and his team of leaders back into their positions, and also getting someone to fill Manyoni's position as the deputy. But the key issue here is it was quite bizarre at the beginning that it took so long for the conference to start with no delegates in attendance. And that signals one thing and one thing only, that the province is also having serious political challenges and divisions, which it can only ignore to their own peril.
What is the reason, you think, for Manyoni not standing as the position for chairperson?
In the first instance, remember that his supporters and constituencies believe that their branches were being sidelined and there were irregularities on selecting people going to the conference. And that becomes the basis of their challenge to the conference itself, that it was a fait accompli that you'd have Ace Makhashule's group winning, because the system was already predetermined before they went to the conference.
Now, there are these disgruntled party members who are preparing to head to court to try and nullify the conference and interdict the provincial delegates from attending the National Elective Conference, which is starting this weekend. How do you think how will this affect the National Elective Conference?
If it were to be affected, it would be a serious blow to the ANC and would even impact Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma more negatively, because the nominations indicate that it's one of the provinces that would have given her a boost. But also it would create a ripple effect, because there are many other provinces who have issues. But it's also possible that the court case may separate two things: the provincial elections as well as the branches sending delegates to the conference.
Now, you indicated that there is a number of court cases that's happening currently within the ANC about these elective conferences. Will it collapse the National Elective Conference if that happens?
It may cripple it and it may delay the start, but I doubt it will necessarily collapse it. But if it were to collapse it, then it would be catastrophic for the ANC. One, it's very expensive to organize a national conference, and therefore would impact on the resources they have, which they ought to be mobilizing for the elections in 2019. And secondly, it is not guaranteed that in the next 3 or 6 months another conference without blemishes would be organized. And that would be too close to the next elections, which would be quite a disaster for the ANC to go to the next elections without certainty of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Will there be unity after the conference, Professor, with all these court cases currently happening?
I doubt you will have any instant unity after the conference, no matter what the leadership may do now, because factionalism has become institutionalized within the ANC. Divisions are quite deep, and problems are deep and structural at times. It will take a conscious, concerted effort over time for these problems to be resolved.
Mm-hmm. Just in closing, Professor, and I'm going to go back to the Free State Conference. We had a number of NEC deployees at the conference, David Mashlobo and Ndiwe Zulu, as well as Malusi Gigaba, and they all said that the gathering was held within the spirit of the ANC. Does that mean that they've endorsed finally the conference of the Free State?
The signal is that they've endorsed it, but also most important is that traditionally these members are to be found within the Zuma faction, which is also within the ambit of Ace Makhashule and the Premier League. So it would not be unexpected of them to endorse the conference, to defend that it should stay as it is.
Professor, I thank you so much for your time and joining us.
Thank you.
That was political analyst Professor Samadoda Fikeni talking to us about the ANC Free State Conference. Now, in the build-up to the ANC conference, SABC News will host an ANC Top 6 official every night. Now, tonight, we speak to the ANC Deputy Secretary General, Jesse Duarte, at 7 p.m. on Channel 404. This is your favorite sister, while our sister stations, Mhlobo Wenene, Ukosi, as well as Ikakwezi and Ligalagwala, will have a small interview, or rather a large interview with the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa from 6 to 7 tonight. That's a 1-hour interview that they will have. But of course, we're asking you the question. We're asking you that very important question that relates to the African National Congress and the conference coming up. And what implications will the court cases have on the National Elective Conference? Let's take a look at what you are telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. This one coming from Wandile says, even if the courts decide otherwise, it won't have an impact. We are praying for Cyril Ramaphosa to be elected as the president. God save Africa, says Wandile. Nazim says there's only the only thing we will see in that conference is chairs flying above the heads of people. And Mungisi says Cyril Ramaphosa and his ... They are using the courts to win in the upcoming elective conference of the ANC. Or probably his faction, he wanted to say. These are some of your comments. Keep them coming and we'll read them as we continue. But right now, it's getting hot in here, people. Let's take a look at what the weather has to say.
Thanks very much and warm welcome. Let's take a look at your weather details. On our satellite image, you're still seeing a whole lot of activity happening over the central interior of Africa, going to the southern parts and the northern parts of South Africa. And today, we're still expecting isolated to scattered thunder showers over the interior of South Africa and the northern parts. Currently, we are expecting partly cloudy skies in Limpopo, going to Gauteng with isolated showers, but that will go to scattered thunder showers as the day goes by, mostly going to the evenings, where we also have a watch of severe thunderstorms. Going to the central interior, up to 80% chance of thunder showers to severe thunderstorms can be expected again over the southern parts of DRC, going to the northern parts of Angola and some parts of Zambia as well, the northern parts of Mozambique and over the interior of Madagascar for today. Now, looping to tomorrow, you will see that we're also expecting something heavy to happen overnight. Around 9 o'clock, severe thunderstorms can be expected over the northern parts of South Africa. That's mostly in Limpopo, going to Mpumalanga and some parts of KwaZulu-Natal and the whole of Gauteng for today. Otherwise, do expect clear skies to few clouds over the interior of South Africa. Along the coastal regions, 30% chance of showers can be expected for tomorrow. Over the central interior, we're still expecting isolated to scattered thunder showers. But today, over South Africa, we do have a warning of high fire danger. Over the interior of Northern Cape, some parts of Free State and Northwest, please do not start any unnecessary fires. Severe thunderstorms expected in the afternoon today over Gauteng, going to the southern parts of Limpopo, the northern parts of Northwest, Mpumalanga, and the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Please do take note of that and keep your cars safe. And do remember that a tornado is one of the possibilities. Partly cloudy skies over the northern parts with isolated to scattered thunder showers. Pretoria will peak at 32 and 31 in Polokwane. Over the interior, we're not expecting lots of rainfall, but clear skies over most parts, only isolated along the coastal regions of Western Cape. The city of Cape Town will sit at a maximum of 23, going to Durban a maximum of 24 with 30% chance of showers to thunder showers over the interior. And not forgetting over the northern parts of KwaZulu-Natal, we do have that watch of severe thunderstorms. Windhoek will sit at a maximum of 31 with rainfall expected, going to the interior of Botswana isolated. Bulawayo at 34 and 46 for Bay Bridge. Maputo will be at 37, 30 to 60% chance of thunder showers and a watch of severe thunderstorms over Maputo as well. Over the interior of Madagascar, 80% chance of thunder showers, a maximum of 26 in Antananarivo and 29 in Mahajanga. Moving to DRC, over the southern parts, something heavy can be expected in these regions, and please do have your umbrella with. Mombasa will be at 31, 33 for Kilimanjaro. Sunny skies forecast for today. Going to the western western parts. We're still expecting lots of rainfall over the northern parts of Angola, going to the interior of Congo Libreville at a maximum of 28 and 38 for Bangui. Over the northern parts, we're seeing clear skies over most parts of the Sahara, but going to the western parts, Rabat, isolated showers can be expected along the coastal regions and over the southern parts. Moving to the interior of Nigeria, we're not expecting much. Clear skies over throughout the night, but tomorrow we'll see clear skies over most parts, but again over the western parts, 30% chance of showers can be expected and along the coastal regions. Your temperatures are expected to be at 35 in Khartoum, 34 for Massawa, Sana'a sitting at a maximum of 22 and clear skies over most parts. Going to the Middle East, we are expecting similar conditions, 19 for Damascus and 21 for Baghdad. Tehran will sit at a maximum of 12 degrees. Let's go to the western sides where we're still expecting cool temperatures over most parts, with Algiers sitting at 16 degrees. That is all. Ndawuyendo.
Zwelini Lawrence Mkhize obtained his medical doctorate at the University of Natal and practiced in Pietermaritzburg. Former MEC of Health, MEC for Finance and Economic Development in KwaZulu-Natal, former Premier of KwaZulu-Natal from 2009 to 2013. He initiated Operation Sukuma Sakhe, the One Home, One Garden program, which was adopted nationwide by government. Dr. Zweli Mkhize served as the Chancellor of the University of KwaZulu-Natal until 2017.
Using the advantage of knowledge and information to promote positive change in society at large.
He is the current Treasurer General of the African National Congress.
Out of the economy, we believe that our economy needs to deliver for us three things. One, there must be growth. Two, there must be jobs, job creation. Three, there must be radical economic transformation. And only a united African National Congress will be able to deliver on those where there's an undivided focus on the issue which is most topical and most relevant for this epoch, and that is the economic transformation in our country.
Dr. Zweli Mkhize stands for unity.
I think winter is definitely one of those seasons where you can really show off your sartorial choices. You can start from a single layer of a shirt, actually starting with thermals, build it up with the shirts. You can have beautiful knits over the shirts, like we've done with Jay.
This film tells the story of a very, very significant political figure in the struggle for freedom in South Africa, who happened to be a woman. She was Nelson Mandela's wife.
The exhibition is an exploration into black femininity. Tabitha is a woman of color, and she is exploring the historical exploitation of the black female body.
Newtown Junction Mall hosted an epic contest in the cold where 3 top South African graffiti artists battled it out for the opportunity to become the Newtown Graffiti Face-Off Master.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune in to Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
Coming to you from the bright lights here in Johannesburg, Jumbo, Africa. This is the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Presley. We'll be with you until 12 o'clock today, and today we focus really on a number of court cases against the African National Congress by its own disgruntled party members who want to nullify the outcomes of the provincial conferences in KZN, the Free State, Mpumalanga, even in the Eastern Cape and in the Northwest Cape.
At the last count, no less than 5 court cases ahead of the National Elective Conference, and that's why we're asking you, what implications will all these court cases have on the 54th National Elective Conference?
Well, you heard some of our learned guests around their take. I would like to get your take on it. Dibans, who says, I honestly don't care. The ANC is long depleted. There won't be an outright majority again in South Africa.
Cornelius Schenk says, perhaps some postponement?
Well, there you have it. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but we're also focusing on the broader spectrum of corruption. Revelations that the company Steinhoff may have been run like a Ponzi scheme. Yeah? That's after the share price fell by more than 80%. So really dented our image internationally as well.
Yeah, our country's reputation has not been done any good either, and we want to find out from you, do we as South Africans care more about public sector corruption than private sector corruption?
Well, thus far, 223 votes are in. 71% are saying yes, we do care more about public sector corruption. 29% are suggesting no.
Very interesting. Let's see what's being said to back this up. Gidizemba Boss says, not at all. Corruption is corruption, even when some people will sugarcoat it and call it accounting irregularities.
Or white-collar crime.
Exactly.
Cello says, corruption is corruption, whether in the public or private sector. But the thing is, we do not expect the people we voted for to be the ones stealing from us. We don't have much to say as who occupies what seat in the private entities.
Silama Jacksock on the button there. Really, it's about who you voted for and how that makes you feel when they steal from you, isn't it?
That's correct. But we also have a sporting question for you today.
Absolutely. Amajita, they've made it 3 out of 3 at the COSAFA Cup. They're through to the semi-finals, Elvis. In fact, they beat Egypt 2-1. And now I want to find out from you, does this mean that Bafana's future is looking bright?
Well, so far Tal says it's difficult to say yes because those players might not get a chance to play for the national team.
Yes, too many times we've seen that happen. Michael Bigamstoller says, great for Amajita, but as it goes for Bafana, I'm not so sure. The only problem with Bafana is that they're always building. And only God knows when they're going to finish. And believe a lot in youngsters in crucial matches like World Cup qualifiers instead of sticking with tried and tested. Michael's had it with bringing on all the old talent to see if we can make it to World Cup qualifiers.
Yeah, and we can't build forever. That's what Michael is suggesting. You need to come to a conclusion and hand the building over to be occupied, you know?
Too true.
Well, there you have it. These are some of your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business.
For the position of chairperson, I officially declare Comrade Ace Magashule.
Ace Magashule's 25-year reign as the ANC strongman and chairperson of the Free State continues as he was re-elected unopposed. And a bid to nullify the ANC Eastern Cape Elective Conference and efforts to stop the ANC in Mpumalanga Conference from going to the ANC National Conference are in court today.
Football side came back from a goal down to beat Egypt 2-1 and advanced to semi-finals of COSAFA's age group tournament. And log-topping Mamelodi Sundowns with 3 games in hand look to avoid last season's mistakes as they go up against Maritzburg United at Loftus Versfeld.
And they pay the price for it. And it is Bankali Sumahoro grabbed his first goal of the season, the former ASEC Mimosa Ivorian centre-back.
Some amazing matches to look forward to.
And five-time champions Barcelona will face English champions Chelsea, and Real Madrid face formidable PSG in the Champions League quarter-finals draw.
Real Madrid versus Paris Saint-Germain. This is quite a match.
All this and more we've got for you later on the Sports Bulletin. Do stay with Elvis as he's got the news.
Ace Magashule's 25-year reign as ANC chairperson for the Free State looks set to continue after he was re-elected unopposed at the Provincial Elective Conference in Paris last night. The former deputy chairperson, Thabo Manyoni, was expected to challenge Magashule, but he declined nomination as he is boycotting the conference along with other disgruntled members. Manyoni has now been replaced by Paseka Nompondo. The rest of the top 5 leaders were also re-elected unopposed.
The position of chairperson, I officially declare Comrade Ace Magashule the provincial chairperson.
Meanwhile, the ANC NEC member David Mashlobo has welcomed the re-election of Ace Magashule as the chairperson of the Free State. Mashlobo also weighed in on the court case facing the ANC Free State leadership.
The intention is to annul this process, but also attempts are being made to bar the province of Free State from participating in the national conference. Inasmuch as the former PEC is cited, but ANC as an organization has been cited in full in the documents. And the matters are in the good hands of the lawyers. We must be able to reiterate our position that we frown upon members of the ANC whose first point of call is to resolve internal matters through the court. ANC doors from all levels are always available to engage on issues, to deal with our own issues. But we know it's a constitutional democracy. We can't say members must not go there, but we dispersuade them, discourage them from doing so. But now that we've reached that particular point, the matter is going to be defended by the organization, and the necessary paperwork is being prepared, and we're very confident that the matter will be adjudicated, because we don't want anything to impact on the most important work of the ANC, which is the 54th National Conference that is starting on the 16th to the 20th of December. We know that the NEC have done whatever is possible, human possible, to listen to comrades in various provinces. Were deployed, and we made decisions.
In the Eastern Cape, the Grahamstown High Court will decide today whether to nullify the outcome of the ANC's Eastern Cape Elective Conference in September. The ruling will be delivered just 4 days before the party's national 54th Elective Conference that takes place here in Johannesburg. Members of the ANC are challenging the legitimacy of the conference that saw Oscar Mabuyane being elected as the new chairperson of the ANC in the Eastern Cape. Violence broke out during the conference that led to the withdrawal of many delegates. Disgruntled ANC members in the OR Tambo, Joe Kwabi, as well as the Amatola regions want the High Court to set aside the outcome of the conference. Earlier, the East London court struck off the roll the urgent application challenging the results of the Eastern Cape African National Congress. The applicants were ordered to pay the cost. Remaining with the ANC infighting, an urgent court application by ANC presidential hopeful Matthew Sposa to stop the Mpumalanga branches that nominated Unity for the ANC top 6 position from attending the party's national conference is expected to be heard in the High Court in Johannesburg today. The applicants have taken the ANC at Luthuli House, the Mpumalanga ANC, as well as the provincial chair, David Mabuza, to court ahead of this weekend's national conference. Some 233 branches nominated unity during their branch meetings after sources said that Mabuza reportedly instructed branches not to choose any candidate but write unity on the leadership nomination forms. ANC Secretary-General Zweli Mkhize says that the organization has identified certain tendencies that are creeping into the organization that needs to be uprooted. Speaking to the SABC, Mkhize said that all the ANC needs to do is to ensure that the conference addresses all these issues and uproot the causes of divisions.
Mkhize says differences within the ANC needs to be managed and the party needs to find a way to resolve the disputes. He says members of the ANC need to persuade each other to settle their differences because it's in the interest of the ANC to go to a successful conference.
We must all take responsibility for what happens in the organization. If at the moment we have divisions that are showing in public, but we believe that those divisions have to be managed. Some of them arise from the way we manage issues. Some of them are not as fundamental and ideological as to really call them fundamental differences. So these are issues of how we're managing issues, and so I think they can still be managed and contained. But yes, if you look back over the years, there are tendencies that we have identified that are creeping into the organization that we need to uproot, and we've said so, and all that we need to be able to do is to ensure that as the conference comes, it addresses all those issues and we uproot the causes of the divisions.
He called for the Commission of Inquiry into the state capture, saying it should expose everything.
We need to ensure that there's a commission of inquiry that exposes everything. So all those emails, all those allegations, all those names of individuals, all those companies must go in through that process. Then South Africans know exactly what we're talking about in this case.
He says the ANC should learn from the outcomes of such a commission and make sure that in future it prevents anything of this nature. Mkhize lamented the fact that the outcomes of the conference must be of building and uniting the ANC, making sure that it emerges with a much better image. Lehana Troteti, SABC News.
Meanwhile, we earlier spoke to a political analyst, Professor Samadoda Fikeni, who weighed in on the Free State Elective Conference and other issues affecting the African National Congress ahead of the weekend's National Elective Conference.
It was a given outcome because if the opposing party is not attending the conference, having stated their grievance, it would simply be a matter of returning Ace Makhashule and his team of leaders back into their positions, and also getting someone to fill Manyoni's position as the deputy. But the key issue here is it was quite bizarre at the beginning that it took so long for the conference to start with no delegates in attendance. And that signals one thing and one thing only, that the province is also having serious political challenges and divisions, which it can only ignore to their own peril.
What is the reason, you think, for Manyoni not standing as the position for chairperson?
In the first instance, remember that his supporters and constituencies believe that their branches were being sidelined and there were irregularities on selecting people going to the conference. And that becomes the basis of their challenge to the conference itself, that it was a fait accompli that you'd have Ace Makhashule's group winning because the system was already predetermined before they went to the conference.
Now, there are these disgruntled party members who are preparing to head to court to try and nullify the conference and interdict the provincial delegates from attending the National Elective Conference, which is starting this weekend. How do you think how will this affect the National Elective Conference?
If it were to be effected, it would be a serious blow to the ANC and would even impact Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma more negatively, because the nominations indicate that it's one of the provinces that would have given her a boost. But also it would create a ripple effect because there are many other provinces who have issues. But it's also possible that the court case may separate two things, the provincial elections as well as the branches sending delegates to the conference.
Now, you indicated that there is a number of court cases that's happening currently within the ANC about these elective conferences. Will it collapse the National Elective Conference if that happens?
It may cripple it and it may delay the start, but I doubt it will necessarily collapse it. But if it were to collapse it, then it would be catastrophic for the ANC. One, it's very expensive to organize a national conference, and therefore would impact on the resources they have, which they ought to be mobilizing for the elections in 2019. And secondly, it is not guaranteed that in the next 3 or 6 months, another conference without blemishes would be organized. And that would be too close to the next elections, which would be quite a disaster for the ANC to go to the next elections without certainty of leadership.
Mm-hmm. Will there be unity after the conference, Professor, with all these court cases currently happening?
I doubt you will have any instant unity after the conference, no matter what the leadership may do now, because factionalism has become institutionalized within the ANC. Divisions are quite deep, and problems are deep and structural at times. It will take a conscious, concerted effort over time for these problems to be resolved.
Mm-hmm. Just in closing, Professor, and I'm going to go back to the Free State Conference. We had a number of NEC deployees at the conference, David Mashlobo and Ndiwe Zulu, as well as Malusi Gigaba, and they all said that the gathering was held within the spirit of the ANC. Does that mean that they've endorsed finally the conference of the Free State?
The signal is that they've endorsed it, but also most important is that traditionally these members are to be found within the Zuma faction, which is also within the ambit of Ace Magashule and the Premier League. So it would not be unexpected of them to endorse the conference, to defend that it should stay as it is.
It was Professor Samadoda Fikeni on that story. Now, earlier we did report to you that bid to have the Eastern Cape Elective Conference nullified has now been dismissed with cost by the Grahamstown High Court. And of course, you heard it, it was with cost. So it's out of the way right now. What next then for the ANC? But the build-up to the ANC Elective Conference, the SABC News will host the ANC Top 6 each and every night. Now tonight we'll be speaking to the ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte at 7 p.m. on Channel 404. This is the channel, your channel of choice. Our sister stations, Mshlobo Wenene, it's the radio stations, Ukosi, Ikwekwezi, Lingwalagala, as well as and those are the stations that will have an interview with Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa from 6 till 7 p.m. tonight. Every night we'll host one of the top 6, so keep it coming and keep on listening, tuning in. Now, the question of the day, we're asking you, we're focusing on the African National Congress and looking at that, what implications will the court cases have on the 54th National Elective Conference? It's on your screen right now. Let me take a look at what you are telling us. This one coming from Icona says, the organization have been exposed and who are at the helm, it's busy destroying the movement. Ridiculed are those who speak truth to power. On the conference, we witness chaos. It's a little bit, Alpha says, I am just waiting for 2019 to remove these ANC people from governance. They must go back to school. Easy come, easy go. Metsimaholo is expected to elect a mayor and speaker if the political parties involved reach an agreement. The highly contested Metsimaholo municipality in the Free State continues to remain a hung council. That follows the by-elections where there was no outright winner. We will later cross to our reporter Ntakwana Ngatani on the latest there. Meanwhile, the Federation of Unions of South Africa, FEDUSA, has assured its members and pensioners that their funds are fully protected. FEDUSA's General Secretary says that their members need not to worry.
The strategy of the PIC, was quite useful in this case because it's built on the principle that you don't put all your eggs in one basket. So about 1% of the assets of the PIC has been exposed.
Only 1%?
Yes, we're talking about between 10 and 15 billion. And we remember we also talk about value of a share, And that's the reason why we feel comfortable, at least that the exposure wasn't too big. And then we look at another aspect, and that is the situation of our members and how the pension fund that they are receiving. And I'm just glad to announce to everybody to remain calm, because the government employees belong to a defined benefit fund.
What does this mean?
Straightforward English is, when you join the pension fund, it's according to the rules. So they might say, look, when you go on retirement after 25 years of service, you'll get 60% or 70% from your final year's salary. And then there's also a third that you can take in terms of, your cash amount. So our members are totally protected. It's the people that have a defined contribution that is exposed to the market. So if a person wants to go on retirement and the fund took a knock now, then your pension fund would be less.
While FEDUSA's Dennis George says that more people should be held accountable.
Remember, a company, it's an organization with structures, with various committees. And therefore, a person, that's the reason why you have a company, so that it's not a one-man show. And therefore, the company can't decide who's guilty and who's not guilty and decide the terms of reference for the investigation, because there's public money involved. And secondly, FEDUSA have also started to consult with our attorneys. And
yes,
and our attorneys, and what we want to start filing with the High Court in South Africa is we want to have, number one, the CEO, because he admitted in the email to his colleagues that he made the biggest mistake. And we want him to be declared a delinquent director. And then we want to go after the other directors one by one. And that declaration of a delinquent director has serious consequences for an individual.
Brandon Lee and Tony Lee Tilsey are expected to appear in the High Court in Johannesburg today for their pre-trial hearing. The twins were arrested in July last year on suspicion of plotting a series of attacks on Jewish institutions and U.S. Embassy. Now, they have been charged with conspiracy and incitement to commit terror-related crimes. The twins have been behind bars since their arrest in July 2016. During their previous appearance in October, the defense raised a constitutional challenge to the charges the brothers are facing and the legislation on which they are being prosecuted. They want the Constitutional Court to give more direction into the matter. It's understood that the twins attempted to travel to Syria to fight for the Islamic State, and Tony Lee communicated with the terrorist group to learn how to build bombs for terrorist attacks in South Africa. 3 men, Mfundo Nkosi, Bongani Musumbuka and Soli Makuba, who were allegedly involved in the murder of the Rhythm City star Dumi Masilela, are expected to appear in the Benoni Magistrates Court east of Johannesburg today. Masilela died in hospital in August after he was shot in an attempted hijacking just outside Johannesburg. The suspects were found in possession of a hijacked Jeep Wrangler, which was allegedly used in the attempted hijacking of Masilela, as well as an unlicensed firearm. The duo are facing charges of robbery with aggravating circumstances.
How are you?
We'll take a short break and we'll be back right after that.
Our stories.
How do I begin?
Our lives. When all seems to fail, we will raise our voices a bit louder for our justice.
Well, I went into absolute shock. My whole body was shaky. I couldn't hold a phone, but there he was. I couldn't believe the nonchalant that they were still in the area 2 weeks later.
in times when the justice system is not able to help us with our individual battles.
I'm willing to do anything. What are you doing? Nothing. Feeling sorry for yourself? No, it's not an option.
These are our stories on Cutting Edge Channel 404.
Now, the bid to have the Eastern Cape Elective Conference nullified has been dismissed with scoffs by the Grahamstown High Court. Now, for more on this and to give us some explanation, we are joined by our reporter, Busisiwe Jamsana. Busisiwe, a very good morning to you. What happened in court this morning?
A very good morning to you too, Elvis. Well, the case was very brief. The Judge Tembekile Malusi walked in and handed down his judgment, saying that the application has been dismissed with costs. Applicants have been ordered to pay costs, legal costs of the respondents. This has been the judgment that has been long awaited by both the applicants and the respondents, because remember, leading up to this judgment, everyone was pinning their hopes, saying, will this case vindicate the Provincial Executive Committee, or vindicate the group that is saying that the Provincial Executive Committee was elected unconstitutionally and therefore cannot preside over political developments of the province. But the court, Elvis, as we've just heard, has just handed its judgment to say the Provincial Executive Committee was elected constitutionally. But you would remember, Elvis, that there's also another dispute sitting at Luthuli House, where a group of disgruntled ANC members and former PEC members have disputed the legitimacy of the Provincial Executive Committee. Important to note, Elvis, is that the group that has written to Luthuli House, that includes the Premier, who is the former chairperson in the province, Phumulo Maswale, and others, are not the same people who took the matter to the court, the Grahamstown High Court. It's other members that took the matter to the Grahamstown High Court, and there's another dispute sitting at Luthuli House. Elvis.
So these are two different matters. So the matter today really speaks to the applicants that was not satisfied with the elective conference.
At this point, we haven't been able to speak to them because they were not in court. Both the applicants and the respondents were not in court today. Some were saying when we called them that because it is just a judgment today, it will take about 5 minutes, and indeed it took less than 5 minutes for the judge to deliver that judgment. But we will be getting hold of them to hear if they will be appealing the ruling of the High Court, and we'll also be speaking to the Provincial Executive Committee that was taken to court by those group of members. But when we spoke to them yesterday, Elvis, they were confident that the court will favor them because they have done everything according to the constitution of the ANC, and therefore they are confident that they're going to win this court case, and indeed they have won the court case.
Well, it seems like there's a legion of court cases happening in the Eastern Cape. How many court cases are happening in the Eastern Cape with the African National Congress?
Well, it's a court case after the other, Elvis. You'd remember that there was a court case in the Mthatha High Court, where some members were disputing or challenging the outcomes of the regional conference that took place in 2015. That court case is still ongoing. They've recently won to appeal the court case because at first they were dismissed, but they've won that case now they're going to be appealing those outcomes again, and we wait to see if they will be successful. An important trend to note also, Elvis, is that all these court cases are against the ANC, and all the people that are challenging these court cases are those who are seen as in support of the former chairperson Phumulo Masualle, in support of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, against those who are in support of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa.
I thank you so much, Mr. Sire Jumsana. I'm now more confused than ever. Thank you so much for your time. Well, there you have it. That was a reporter in the Eastern Cape. Well, you heard the case has been dismissed there. Which one it is, I still don't know. Well, we'll find out. The Middle East saw a fifth day of protests yesterday over the U.S. President Donald Trump's declaration of Jerusalem as Israel's capital, while further global condemnation followed the deeply controversial move. Now, tens of thousands of protesters gathered in Lebanon, and while the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with the EU foreign ministers in Brussels, declaring that the move was lauded by him as historic, and it makes peace possible. Joining us now in studio is Apostle Julius Malloy, spokesperson of the Christian leaders who are members of the South African Friends of Israel. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for having me in studio, Elvis.
First and foremostly, I would like to check with you, what do you make of the move by the President Donald Trump to declare Jerusalem as Israel's capital?
I would think that the move by President Trump is not actually a move of the president himself, but it's a move of America itself. You know, because I think you could remember that I think it was in 1999 when it was agreed by the Jerusalem Act, which agreed that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and therefore many presidents that came after that just failed to bring that to fruition, and President Donald Trump just did that. You know, he didn't create something new.
Why do you think President Trump did it and the others did not?
Well, I would think that maybe it could be fear, or it could be, lacking the boldness to do it. And I would think that, remember that Barack Obama, for an example, he made it part of his campaigning speech to say that Jerusalem will be declared capital of Israel and it should not be divided. But did he deliver once he was in office? It did not happen. Trump did the same promise and he delivers. He's just delivering on his promise. But it should not be misconstrued that it is a Trump-initiated concept. It has been there. It's an American concept.
Why are you Friends of Israel?
I'm a friend of Israel because I'm a Christian. And the bedrock of the Christian faith is the Jewish faith. You cannot even start the belief about Christianity if you don't start it with the Jewish faith. And therefore, our relationship with Israel dates back to that. And also the relationship we have with God, we worship and pray to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And Jacob is Israel. So as a result of that, based on our faith and our belief, that relationship is an umbilical cord relationship.
So this change will make Jews and Christians very happy. Is that what you're suggesting?
I believe so. I believe not only, remember it is, and I like how you put it, to say Jews and Christians, because the question is this a geopolitical challenge or is it a religious challenge? And from our perspective, it's a religious challenge, to say we will be happy to have Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, purely because it has always been. It has never been anything else. Israel has never been, Jerusalem has never been called anything else other than Jerusalem.
But it's a disputed space, many would say.
Disputed space, yes. Disputed by who? And under what circumstances? Because if we are going to go into the concept of it is disputed, yes, but did Jerusalem exist under any other different name except for Jerusalem? From the Iron Age, it has been Jerusalem. So you can dispute something if maybe you can have historic proof of some form of ownership of it. predating its existence. But if there is nothing like that, then how do you even go and dispute it? I don't understand that.
Because some would say that the land belonged to the Palestinians. It was given partly to the Israelis, and then they invaded the country as a whole, so to speak. Your thoughts on that?
Yes. Remember that Israel has always been in existence from the Iron Age. And Palestine existed from when? Was there ever a country called Palestine? No.
Was there ever land given to the Israelis?
By who? You see, that's another thing, because I know that there are people who are talking about the Balfour Declaration, and they say the Balfour Declaration was actually giving land to the Israelis, but it's exactly what Trump did now. To say it was not the English giving the land to the Israelis; it was them accepting the truth that it belongs to the Israelis and just making that kind of a declaration. In his statement, President Trump, when he speaks, he says, every country has a right to determine its own capital. And therefore, it cannot be that people from outside or other countries would want to contest where a specific country has its own capital. And therefore, because of those kinds of sentiments, I think it is only proper to accept that Israel has never been given to anybody. It is just that people or leaders of different times, time eras, accept the truth that Israel and Jerusalem, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and that's it. I really don't see.
Now, the Palestinian Authority and the Arab League may seek a United Nations General Assembly resolution against US President Donald Trump's utterances. Do you think that will assist the process, or do you think it will bring peace?
The question is, if America decides that Jerusalem is the capital city of Israel, why would the United Nations want to have a problem with that? It's like when you visit a country and you say, I would go, for an example, I'll go to Lesotho and not go to Swaziland. And then people want to have a problem. Why do you want to focus on a specific area? So they can do that. Remember, United Nations existed only after Israel has been in existence for thousands of years. So this thing of making United Nations a superpower and then what they say is what goes. And we know how biased United Nations sometimes becomes, especially I can use the examples of the International Criminal Court, where they only prosecute African leaders and nobody else. So the position of the United Nations as far as Israel and as far as Jerusalem is concerned is really to be taken with a pinch of salt, because it depends on the politics that are happening at that time.
Are you of the view then that the two-state solution cannot be part and parcel of peace in the Middle East?
Remember, the two-state solution does not start now as a concept. It was provided when the United Nations provided a partitioning plan. And unfortunately, the Arabs rejected that. They want the entire state of Israel. They don't want to share anything.
But does Israel recognize that the Palestinians have a place in the sun?
Yes. The Israelis have always accepted. I mean, the fact that even in the Israeli parliament, there are Palestinians who are represented there, and I think when we met at the Constitution Hill a couple of weeks ago, the members were there. I think there were 6 members who were presented there. So the presence of Palestinian people is accepted by the Israeli people, but it is just that there is an insistence from the Palestinian people that they don't want to share anything. They want to take the entire country. Now the question is then what happens to the Jewish people? But as a Christian nation and as a Christian leadership, our concern is not necessarily about the geopolitical conflict that is happening, but it's about our heritage sites that are there in that place. We want to preserve that, and I think it is our right as a Christian community to be able to access that, walk where Jesus walked, engage with Israel as freely as we can be, and not have a situation whereby there are challenges or conflicts when we have to. And I think freedom of association is one of the basic fundamental rights, at least in South Africa.
We've seen protests now in Jerusalem and around the globe around this particular issue. Where do you think this will end?
Number one, I think it can never be correct to want to push the truth under the carpet just because you want peace. And I would think that what President Trump did is to first declare the truth. Jerusalem is the capital city of Israel. Let's accept that. Number two, then let's talk about peace. But because peace, if it is not based on truth, then is it really peace? And how are you going to hold on to that peace? Because it cannot be that, like you're talking about the rioting that is happening right now. Why is people choosing to resort to violence and aggression, whereas there is a platform for open debate and engagement on a couple of issues? If President Trump has taken a wrong decision, and I want to re-emphasize, it is not a Trump decision, it's an American decision. It was supposed to be done in 1999, it was never done. So why is there no open negotiation? Why is there no open debate? Why is it always that there must be threats of violence and all of that stuff? And you're saying, like, give you an example, two children are fighting for a toy. You know that this toy belongs to this child, but because this one is a bully, you will give him the toy just to keep the peace. That is how I see the concept of the United Nations about peace coming about.
Apostle, I thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you so much.
There you have it, Apostle Julius Molloy. His thoughts, the spokesperson of the Christian leaders who are members of the South African Friends of Israel. I'd like to get your thoughts as well. Let me know, what do you think of the pronouncement by Donald Trump as Jerusalem as the capital of Israel? And we'll be back after this break with your sports news.
When life takes a different turn.
If I didn't eat the speak, he was going to evict me.
Your will to persevere is ignited.
I'm not a professional speaker, but I'll try my best to give you a word of inspiration.
He was just trying to provide for his family.
If you can't accept it, change it. If you cannot change it, accept it.
And a new story begins.
Made a resolve to myself. I'm learning something new.
Upilong, every Friday at 5:30. Be part of the life-changing journey.
A lot of us rely on tech to survive, and Africa is already a mobile-first continent.
We build mobile technology that connects motorcycle taxis to commuters and businesses in real time.
My phone was the most important thing.
Africans are using technology to innovate. On Network, we have African technology and social media news. Even robots have heard about us.
Hello, watch Network on SABC.
For African technology and social media news, join Ms. Phumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Welcome back. Time now for the sport. My name is Kendall Makhamate, and we start off with a great story about how South Africa's under-20 men's football side came back from a goal down and ended up beating Egypt 2-1 in their final match of Group B. Now, with the win, Amajita secured themselves a spot in the semi-final of the 2017 COSAFA Cup and expected to play the best runner-up on Thursday. Amajita finished the round-robin stage top of Group B, having won all 3 of their games. They joined East African guest nation Uganda in the semi-finals of the 2017 COSAFA Cup. Just to remind you once again, their opponent is said to be the best of the runners-up from all 3 groups. Now we stay with football news and we'll bring you a little bit about how Egypt star Mohamed Salah has won England's prestigious BBC African Player of the Year award, rewarded for 2017 packed with sparkling displays for Liverpool, Roma and his national team. The 25-year-old fired Egypt to the final of the Africa Cup of Nations and almost single-handedly took Egypt to their first World Cup final since 1990, scoring 5 and setting up 2 of their other goals in qualifying.
Well deserved. It's a fantastic prize for a pretty good player, to be honest.
Thank you. Mohammed, what does it feel like winning this award?
Yeah, I'm very happy to win this award. You know, it's a special feeling for me, and I would like to win it also next year.
Now Salah joins African legends such as Ivorian duo Didier Drogba and Yaya Toure. The latter won it twice, as well as Liberian striker George Weah in winning this award. Now, bringing it back home, the 2 teams from the capital city will be in absolute premiership action tomorrow night as they play catch-up. SuperSport United will be away to Free State Stars, while Mamelodi Sundowns are planning to host Maritzburg United in Pretoria.
Sundowns could easily run away with the league championship if their current form and position on the log are anything to go by. The Brazilians top the standings with 22 points from 11 matches, and they have 3 games in hand. Hopefully, they have learned that games in hand never mean points in the bag. They take on the team of choice on Wednesday, following a 1-0 win away to Golden Arrows on Sunday.
Maritzburg is almost a copy of what is happening here. They play on the break also. They will sit in and catch us on the break, and it's more dangerous because it's at home now. We normally the aggressors as all the time. So when you have things like this, you try to score early, and then it sorts your problem out. They are happy when we win, you know them. They are happy, it's okay, it's good. I like to see that, good.
We have to keep on pushing. I mean, you have to go through tough times, and I mean, that's the most important part of it. You go through challenges whereby I haven't scored up to so far, but it's exciting for me because if you keep on pushing, somehow it's going to open up, and then when it opens up, I'm sure it's going to keep on coming. The goals will keep on coming so that I help the team try to win the games as well. Look, it's amazing, you know, coming to a packed stadium, having to have these fans coming to support us, and we really appreciate that, obviously, as we try to stay on top of the log.
After their exploits in the CAF Confederation Cup and losing in the final, SuperSport United are 6 matches adrift. They are playing catch-up with the rest. Amatsatanza Ako Pitori are currently 11th on the log with 15 points from 8 matches. They survived by the skin of their teeth against Cape Town City as they equalized deep into referee's optional time. And Benny McCarthy was evidently fuming in the citizens' dugout.
We thought the goal would come eventually. Unfortunately, they had to come in stoppage time. I think if we got that goal in the first half, the first few minutes, I think it would have been a different game. But unfortunately, that's how it goes. You miss goals, and then they get a chance, they score, and then all of a sudden in a back foot. So it happens.
SuperSport should be wary of Free State Stars, who suffered a 3-0 loss against Bloemfontein Celtic on Sunday.
It doesn't get any easier from here because now you go to Free State Stars, which is going to be a difficult game away from home in Bethlehem, and then you got Baroka and then Bloem Celtic, so it doesn't get any easier before that Christmas break.
Both matches are scheduled to kick off at 7:30 p.m. Mtutuzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, the UEFA Champions League draw for the last 16 was conducted in Nyon, Switzerland. The battle for supremacy promises to be as intense as the most fiery in the competition's history, with 5-time champions Barcelona facing English champions Chelsea and Real Madrid set to play a new look and formidable PSG in the Champions League quarterfinals. The round of 16 will begin in February.
The 5 English clubs created history by qualifying for the Champions League knockout stage. England became the first country to have 5 teams in the last 16.
It's great news so far that 5 of them, they have the chance to fight for the trophy. That means that the Premier League is getting very strong. But now the big games are coming. Now that's when they have to show that they are capable of challenging the other big clubs in Europe for the big trophy.
Despite the big number, none of the English Premier League teams will face each other. The rules state that teams from the same association cannot be drawn against each other. Tottenham Hotspurs can expect to face a sterner test than the one posed by Juventus in their last meeting. It was a pre-season friendly at Wembley earlier this year, which the North Londoners won. Manchester City have an easier-looking fixture against FC Basel. However, they will be wary of the Swiss team that has a good record against English sides. Liverpool will join against Porto, and Manchester United will face Sevilla. Chelsea were handed a tough test. They were paired with 5-time European champions Barcelona. Having finished second in their group behind Roma, Antonio Conte's men were hoping for a potential tie against Besiktas. However, they came out against a band of superstars. The draw threw up another stunner. Real Madrid must overcome Paris Saint-Germain if they are to defend their title. Shakhtar Donetsk will battle it out with Roma. Bayern Munich avoided the big English and Spanish teams. They were paired with Turkish champions Besiktas, a team they last played against in the 1997-98 season. Lebhan Tube, SABC News.
Now, the 15-member squad that will fly the flag of the 2018 Under-19 Cricket World Cup in New Zealand has been revealed. South Africa's Under-19 team defeated England in the final of the Youth One-Day International Triangular Series at Senvis Park in Potchefstroom this last Sunday.
Oozing confidence of the series in confidence from their 3-wicket win over the English in the final of the series in Potchefstroom yesterday, these 15 youngsters will make up the class of 2018 that will do duty for South Africa in New Zealand next month. South Africa are in Group A with hosts the Kiwis, defending champions the West Indies and Kenya.
It's an exciting group of players. I think one of the biggest things was obviously trying to balance a bit of experience, older guys out of school, and some new exciting young talents. So I thought yesterday some experience showed in terms of the game we played against England, and the boys really stood up to have good confidence booster to go to the World Cup.
The Under-19 setup has long been considered a stepping stone to the senior national team, and these young men are eagerly awaiting their chance to show their mettle on the international stage, especially following their victory over England. Wicketkeeper batsman Wandile Makwetu is one of the senior members of the squad, having played in the Bangladesh edition of the tournament last year.
I think it's a real confidence booster to see that we're keeping pace with some of the biggest teams in the country, in the world. So that's really exciting for us, and I think the group has shown now that they're capable of playing at that level. So that's the kind of standards we're expecting of ourselves now.
Tando Ntini, son of former Proteas fast bowler Makaya, is keeping it in the family. The 17-year-old is a fast bowling all-rounder in progress, already hitting speeds of about 130 kilometers an hour.
He's pretty much my coach as well and my mentor, but he doesn't say that much, so that helps a bit.
I'm sure he must be so proud of you today.
He is very proud. We've worked together for about 10 years now. It's a massive achievement for me and my father as well, so I'm really proud for that.
Meanwhile, former winner of the Under-19 World Cup and fast becoming one of the Proteas' premier weapons, Kagiso Rabada, was named by the New African magazine as one of their top 100 most influential people on the continent, joining the likes of Olympic royalty Caster Semenya and Wade Van-Niekerk.
KG is one of the biggest influences in South Africa, so it's a massive pat on the shoulder for us as kids growing up and looking up to him. So we're really looking forward to, and I'm really happy for him.
Yeah, KG is a real inspiration to all of us. Having gone to the same school as him, I know him quite well, so it's quite nice to see someone so young making waves in the world like that. So he's really an inspiration for all of us young cricketers in South Africa at the moment.
The 22-year-old Rabada is the youngest ever to make the list. Samantha Mari, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well done to the Ntini family, grooming that young man to get to that point where he's actually also representing his country. Now, New Zealand thrashed the West Indies by 240 runs on the fourth day of the second cricket test in Hamilton. With this victory, the Black Caps clinched the series 2-0 after winning the first test in Wellington by an innings and 67 runs.
The Windies resumed their second innings on 30 for the loss of 2 wickets, needing 444 runs for an unlikely victory. There were initial moments of brilliance from the visitors, but it didn't take long before stand-in captain Craig Brathwaite returned to the pavilion as Trent Boult took his 200th test wicket.
Standing achievement.
And look at him, he's not celebrating one little bit. He's frustrated with himself, he deserves it. He's been a great servant for New Zealand cricket.
The Windies' wickets continue to fall regularly.
Top edge and taken.
Only Roston Chase provided some resistance.
Through, and that should dribble away for 4.
He hit an impressive 64 runs before he was sent packing. His 78 run 6th wicket partnership with Raymond Reefer, the only significant one of the innings. Reefer managed 29 runs, but a fine Kane Williamson catch signalled the end of his innings.
Have the habit of pulling off some speckies, and that's just another one.
It didn't take too long for the Kiwis to wrap up the Windies' tail. The tourists ended on 203 for 9, with one of their batsmen retired hurt. New Zealand recording a comprehensive 240-run win.
That's the end of the Test match and a series victory for New Zealand.
We know how talented this West Indies side is, how much they are improving, much like our side as well. So both teams fought really hard, but like I say, it was nice we were able to stick to our plans for a long period of time and get the rewards.
Tough loss, but you know, we saw on bouncy pitches, you know, you have to be decisive in your shot selection, and you know, that's one thing we can take away. We saw how those guys played, and you know, going forward, we just need to be more decisive, and we'll be good.
The teams will now enjoy a week-long break before the first one-day international in Whangarei next Wednesday. Liesel Sankel, SABC News.
And that's where we leave it with the sport. We'll be back shortly with more news at the top of the hour. You're watching Newsroom.
Baleka Mbete, taught in Babana in Swaziland, worked for the African National Congress in several African cities, including Dar es Salaam, Nairobi, Gaborone, Harare and Lusaka. Mbete became the first Secretary General of the ANC Women's League after the unbanning of the ANC. Amongst other leadership roles, she was the member of the Presidential Panel on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the ANC National Executive Committee and the Pan-African Parliament. She was Deputy President to Kgalema Motlanthe in 2008. She's the current Speaker of the National Assembly of South Africa since 2014 and National Chairperson of the ANC. Mbete was awarded the 2016 King Legacy Award by the Martin Luther King Jr. Foundation in the United States for her distinguished leadership roles over the years and for her positive contributions in the global community.
I take with humility, and it puts quite a burden on one's shoulders, but I guess also throughout one's life in struggle, maybe it was a preparation for this day.
Sports Live, Saturday and Sundays at 8:30 p.m.
We're talking news, business and sporting updates both continentally and abroad. South Africa is in its first economic recession since 2009.
Currency has appreciated quite a lot, especially for this year. And it has benefited from a number of things, not so much to do with what was happening here at home.
The Islamic State-linked news agency Amaq claims the latest attack was launched because of Australia's backing in the US fight against the group.
Constad is one of the dozens of women who have accused Cosby of sexual assault, but hers is the only case recent enough to be subjected to criminal prosecution.
Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
It's 1200 hours, no, it's 1100 hours. Central Africa time here on the newsroom. Jumbo Africa to the final hour. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And it is the 12th though, isn't it? My name is Kendall Mahamat.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock today. On the question of the day, we focus on a number of court cases against the ANC by disgruntled party members who want to nullify the outcome of their provincial conferences. There's one in KZN, Eastern Cape, Free State and Northwest, Mpumalanga, everywhere.
Yeah, that's like a 5 out of 9 provinces and court cases. We're asking you, what implications will all of these court cases have on the 54th National Elective Conference?
Now, this is what you are telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. Let's take a look.
Tando Wababa says these court cases are a thunder, but trust me, there'll be no rain.
Boza says, strange that all the ANC haters have something to say about my ANC. ANC is a living organization, and I will hold a successful conference to sustain its leadership, to reinstate the dignity of black people and unite South Africa. Very, 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 very strong there from Boza. You can keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But we're also conducting a poll today, Kendall. There are revelations that Steinhoff may have been run like a Ponzi scheme.
Seems like it. By all accounts, they've lost 80% of their value in a matter of days. We've got a whole lot of investment arms reeling from that shock. PIC as well, you know, but public service pensions in danger of being wiped away. And we're asking you, do we as South Africans care more about public sector corruption than private sector corruption?
Well, there you have it, 252 votes in. 73% of you in South Africa and on the continent of Africa are suggesting, yes, we pay more attention to the public sector corruption than to the corporate sector or the private sector. One dealer says, our pensions are not safe at all. Well, you heard it there from Dennis George. It is safe at this point in time because they made some contingencies there. Massive corruption, he says. We need our third of our pension. We don't benefit in investments.
Dipansu says, it's not a matter of caring about the other or one or the other or more of the other, but the citizens are fed up. And corruption only exists in the public sector. Private sector is poisoned with corruption that no one talks about, especially the civic societies that are very vocal when it's government.
Keep them coming, people. We'll read them as we continue, but we're also having a question on the sport.
Absolutely. We're talking about South Africa's under-20 side that's made sure that they get into the semi-finals of the COSAFA Cup in Zambia. 3 out of 3 they have won. We want to find out from you, does this mean that Bafana's future is looking bright?
That's a deep question. Well, let's take a look at what you're telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom on that question.
First up, one dealer comes in again on this one. It says, congratulations, Amajita. You are doing well so far.
Nazim says, yes, they are looking bright, but soon they will disappear into thin air.
It seems to be the predominant theme about how well they do at age group level, and once they try and get to Bafana, they all disappear, don't make it. Very interesting.
And we wonder why. Well, maybe there's an investigation needed there into soccer as a corporate sector.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what we got to leave it for now. Let's take a look at your news headlines. Conference are going to appeal the judgment at the Constitutional Court.
For the position of chairperson, I officially declare Comrade Ace Magashule.
Ace Magashula's 25-year reign as ANC chairperson for the Free State continues as he was re-elected unopposed. And FEDUSA guarantees its members and pensioners that their funds are fully protected. Those are your headlines. But before we get there, let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, thank you very much. About that Amajita question, I'm hoping to be speaking to Phil Mohodi, the head of SAFA in Soweto, about the Discovery Walter Sisulu Challenge. I will be posing a couple of those questions to him about what exactly happens to all this talent once it gets to senior level. So make sure that you stick around for that chat. We're hoping to be able to have that about 11:35 or so. For now, this is what else we've got for you in the sports today. South Africa's under-20 men's football side comes back from a goal down to beat Egypt 2-1 and advance to the semi-finals of COSAFA's age group tournament. And log-topping Mamelodi Sundowns with 3 games in hand look to avoid last season's mistakes as they go up against Maritzburg United at Loftus Versfeld tomorrow night.
And they pay the price for it. And it is Bangali Sumahoro grabbed his first goal of the season, the former ASEC Mimosa Ivorian centre-back.
Some amazing matches to look forward to.
5 times champions Barcelona will face English champions Chelsea, and Real Madrid face formidable PSG in the Champions League quarter-finals draw.
Real Madrid versus Paris Saint-Germain. This is quite a match.
Be sure to stick around for all this around about 11:35. For now, it's back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Breaking news, of course, right now. The applicants in the bid to nullify the Eastern Cape Elective Conference are going to appeal the judgment at the Constitutional Court. The High Court in Grahamstown has dismissed with cost the court application to nullify the Eastern Cape Elective Conference. No reasons have been given. 9 disgruntled ANC members had sought to challenge the legitimacy of the current Provincial Executive Committee. The PEC was elected in a chaotic conference in East London in September. The group alleges that many delegates left and only a faction supported the election of the new chairperson, Oscar Mabuyane, and voted. Now, members of the ANC at first challenged that legitimacy of the conference that saw Oscar Mabuyane being elected as the new chairperson. As you know, that violence broke out. There was chairs being thrown left, right and centre at that conference. And those disgruntled ANC members in the OR Tambo, the Joe Kwabi and the Amatola region sought the High Court to set aside the outcome of the conference. And as you just heard, the East London Court has now struck off the roll that urgent application challenging the results of the Eastern Cape African National Congress Elective Conference. The applicants were ordered to pay the cost. Our reporter Busisiwa Jamsana in Grahamstown spoke to us a little earlier, just after the ruling.
The case was very brief. The Judge Tembekile Malusi walked in and handed down his judgment, saying that the application has been dismissed with costs. Applicants have been ordered to pay costs, legal costs of the respondents. This has been the judgment that has been long awaited by both the applicants and the respondents, because remember, leading up to this judgment, everyone was pinning their hopes, saying, will this case vindicate the Provincial Executive Committee, or vindicate the group that is saying that the Provincial Executive Committee was elected unconstitutionally and therefore cannot preside over political developments of the province. But the court, Elvis, as we've just heard, has just handed its judgment to say the Provincial Executive Committee was elected constitutionally. But you would remember, Elvis, that there's also another dispute sitting at Luthuli House, where a group of disgruntled ANC members and former PEC members have disputed the legitimacy of the Provincial Executive Committee. Important to note, Elvis, is that the group that has written to Luthuli House, that includes the Premier, who is the former chairperson in the province, Phumulo Maswale, and others, are not the same people who took the matter to the court, the Grahamstown High Court. It's other members that took the matter to the Grahamstown High Court, and there's another dispute sitting at Luthuli House. Elvis.
So these are two different matters. So the matter today really speaks to the applicants that was not satisfied with the elective conference.
At this point, we haven't been able to speak to them because they were not in court. Both the applicants and the respondents were not in court today. Some were saying when we called them that because it is just a judgment today, it will take about 5 minutes, and indeed it took less than 5 minutes for the judge to deliver that judgment, but we will be getting hold of them to hear if they will be appealing the ruling of the High Court, and we'll also be speaking to the Provincial Executive Committee that was taken to court by those group of members. But when we spoke to them yesterday, Elvis, they were confident that the court will favor them because they have done everything according to the constitution of the ANC, and therefore they are confident that they're going to win this court case, and indeed they have won the court case.
Well, it seems like there's a legion of court cases happening in the Eastern Cape. How many court cases are happening in the Eastern Cape with the African National Congress?
Well, it's a court case after the other, Elvis. You'd remember that there was a court case in Mthatha, in the Mthatha High Court, where some members were disputing or challenging the outcomes of the regional conference that took place in 2015. That court case is still ongoing. They've recently won to appeal the court case because at first they were dismissed, but they've won that case. Now they're going to be appealing those outcomes again, and we wait to see if they will be successful. An important trend to note also, Elvis, is that all these court cases are against the ANC, and all the people that are challenging these court cases are those who are seen as in support of the former chairperson Phumulo Masualle, in support of Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, against those who are in support of Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa.
Meanwhile, Ace Magashula's 25-year reign as ANC chairperson for the Free State looks set to continue after he was re-elected unopposed at the Provincial Elective Conference in Paris last night. Former Deputy Chairperson Thabo Manyoni was expected to challenge Magashule, but he declined the nomination as he is boycotting the conference along with other disgruntled members. Manyoni has now been replaced by Paseka Nompondo. The rest of the top 5 leaders were also re-elected unopposed.
For the position of chairperson, I officially declare Comrade Ace Magashule the provincial chairperson.
Meanwhile, ANC NEC member David Mashlobo has welcomed the re-election of Ace Magashule as the chairperson of the Free State. Mashlobo also weighed in on the court case facing the ANC Free State leadership.
The intention is to annul this process, but also attempts are being made to bar the province of Free State from participating in the national conference. Inasmuch as the former PEC is cited, but ANC as an organization has been cited in full in the documents. And the matters are in the good hands of the lawyers. We must be able to reiterate our position that we frown upon members of the ANC whose first point of call is to resolve internal matters through the court. ANC doors from all levels are always available to engage on issues, to deal with our own issues. But we know it's a constitutional democracy. We can't say members must not go there, but we dispersuade them, discourage them from doing so. But now that we've reached that particular point, the matter is going to be defended by the organization, and the necessary paperwork is being prepared, and we're very confident that the matter will be adjudicated, because we don't want anything to to impact on the most important work of the ANC, which is the 54th National Conference that is starting on the 16th to the 20th of December. We know that the ANC have done whatever is possible, human possible, to listen to comrades in various provinces, were deployed, and we made decisions.
Remaining with ANC infighting, an urgent court application by the ANC presidential hopeful Matthews Posa to stop the Mpumalanga branches that nominated Unity for the ANC top 6 positions from attending the party's national conference is expected to be heard in the High Court in Johannesburg today. The applicants have taken the ANC at Latuli House, the Mpumalanga ANC, as well as the provincial chair, David Mabuza, to court ahead of this weekend's national conference. Some 233 branches nominated Unity during their branch meetings after sources said that Mabuza reportedly instructed the branches not to choose any candidate but write Unity on the leadership nomination forms. ANC presidential hopeful Dr. Zweli Mkhize says it is the responsibility of all leaders of the ruling party to work together to ensure unity in the organization. He, Mkhize, who's the ruling party's Treasurer General, is one of the hopefuls that's aiming to become the next ANC president. The national conference starts on Saturday in Nasrec here in Johannesburg. The favorites to succeed President Jacob Zuma are ANC MP Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma and the Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa. Speaking to SABC News, Mkhize said that the party's planned elective conference will go ahead as planned.
The conference will happen, but even if you were to postpone it by another year, there are tensions that become related to the fact that the conference is coming that have to be managed, and we will manage them right up till the conference door.
All right, we'll unpack the preparations and so on and so forth. But I want to start with you as your job, because you've been the Treasurer General, and a couple of years ago you said, we're not rich, but we're not broke. We're not going to turn super profits like mining houses. What is the state of the ANC's finances?
Well, it is still the same. We're not rich, we're not broke, but the ANC does not have, you know, a commodity or something that it sells so that it can make profits. So it's an organization that basically depends on the goodwill of its members and supporters. So we go out there and ask people to make contributions, and then people will make a contribution, and we'll continue operating on that basis. And it will not change, because the ANC has always lived on the basis of people have to make contribution for it to go about its operations.
Now, 5 years ago, we sat on a stage in Mangaung, Bloemfontein, just after you'd been appointed, and 5 years on, and it happens quickly. How would you look back at your tenure as TG? How would you say you performed?
Well, I think we've performed reasonably well as the Treasurer General, because mainly our role is that of creating a platform from which the organization should be able to carry out its programs, and that it must maintain its profile. It must be able to reach out to communities, our campaigns, to be able to talk to people, to talk to them about our policies, to talk to them about what to expect you know, out of our government, and to talk to them about, you know, why they should continue to have their confidence in the African National Congress. I think we've done reasonably well. I think the challenge is that you know, once you're in government and the situations are as complex as what we have in South Africa, you're going to have things that we're going to do very well. There are going to be things where are going to be criticized. There are only going to be areas where you'll find things that you have done wrong. And so you learn as you go. And there's been a whole mixed bag, I think, you know, if you were to look at the 5 years. But the fact that the economic situation has been challenging, I think has really put a lot of stress and criticism on us, because people are feeling somehow unhappy, largely because the economic situation has been a major challenge.
5 years on from Treasurer General, are you ready to be President of the ANC?
Well, we leave that to the delegates. After all, whatever number of candidates you may have, it's not so much up to them, it's more up to the delegates as to whether they will be able to vote for that particular individual. At the end of the day, only one of us is going to be made the president, and so I think we must say the message from all of us is that we're willing to lead if elected, so we're also willing to be led by those who will be elected. We need to make sure that at the end of the day we emerge with a leadership collective that is fairly able to represent the sentiments, the spirit of the organization, as well as also create the kind of image that will make people continue to have confidence in the African National Congress.
Some people are saying that you represent the compromise candidate, that perhaps you could unify the party in some way, which is almost a sad indictment on the state of the party, that you seem to have these sides that are fighting each other, and that the notion of a compromise candidate speaks volumes to that.
Yeah, the compromise candidate is more a media story. In the ANC, we just nominate. So if you are nominated, the branches will consider you. But yes, indeed, the message that we have been raising in public is that of promoting unity. But at the end of the day, it's a responsibility of each and every one of the leaders of the ANC to collectively work together for the unity of the organization. After all, you know, because of the campaigns and the debates in the media, it sometimes looks like we're talking about people who are in different organizations. The truth of the matter is that all of those candidates are serving together. They actually meet every now and again as colleagues, as comrades, and they sit in one committee, and there's no hostility. So I think what's important is to also try and manage the excitement that has to come inevitably when you have to select leaders. Elections are like that. But at the end of the day, we all have a responsibility. This ANC has to be united, and the responsibility for that is that of all the members of the ANC and all its leaders.
All right, let's start unpacking some of these issues. And I know that the ANC always talks about a collective leadership, so I'm going to be asking you the questions, but you're representing the leadership of the ANC. Let's start with this story that we showed just now, Sindiso Makaka. You've lost a future leader, and everybody says it's factional. How did the party get to a point where it starts killing its own?
You know, to be honest, I really don't know. It's a very sad one. You know, you know, Sindiso Makaka is just as young as my own children. Apart from him being a leader, it's a very sad one for us to lose young leaders like that. I know him very well, and you know, he's one young fellow who has had lots of energy and was really a very good leader and very promising, as it were. Very outspoken, and he's a fellow who couldn't say no to him. If he wanted to raise the issue, that's how he was. However, we can't tell what has happened in the process, and we have to go deeply into this matter, and whether you know, the statements that are being made. I mean, I see someone was saying it was about factions, someone before had said it was about corruption. Whatever the reason, there's not enough reasons for us to accept that there was a way, there was a reason, a basis on which he could have been killed. There was no reason. So we need to work together to firstly ensure that there's a strong team of police that go in there, and those who are there need to be strengthened, and those who are there, we need to make sure we work with communities to help that, you know, they must support them, and we've made that call. But even inside the organization, we need to go in again. The leadership in the province has gone in there to separate out on political matters to see whether there's anything that can be found that should need to be solved to actually stop this kind of problem. As to what it is, we have to find out when the
As national leadership, how can you say we don't know what it is? Because it is a party problem, and nobody gets killed and nobody knows what's going on. 22 people have died, I believe, since about 2011, which makes it the worst area, KwaZulu-Natal. It's happening in other parts of the country. But how is it that you can't know? It's either you are failing in leading by not being able to get people on the ground to tell you these stories.
Yes, it depends how the crime has been committed. It also depends on the level of investigation. It also depends on the environment around which the police are investigating. But we must say we have to find out what happened. At the end of the day, yes, it is not a good image for us when you see those kinds of things happening. But at the same time, I think it's important to say it's at the end of it is a criminal matter. The police have to investigate, and there shouldn't be anything political about anyone who gets found, even if there might be, you know, members members of an organization, even if they might be leaders, but once it comes to killing, it's a crime and it's criminal. It has to be exposed as such.
So hand on heart, at Luthuli House, you have no idea who's doing this killing?
No, look, it has to be with the police. The police have to give us. I think we need to be very careful that you know, political parties don't have the same capacity to investigate as the police have, and it's important for us to always give the police the support and the independence to be able to investigate. And of course, we have to go in there and ensure that there's enough support for the police and for the community to be able to come out and give us the information. But we have to make sure that the police are the ones that are investigating, and it has to be dealt with. And the message for us from the leadership, the message is to say we condemn this, and we say no, none of our members must be found to be responsible for it, and that will act if we find it, but also they must go all the way out to help the police to investigate and give all the information that is necessary.
You agree that the party is not unified? In 2011, when I first spoke to President Zuma, he said, I asked him directly, is your party unified? And he said yes, very confidently. And yet, at that stage, as far back as then, people were already saying this party is in trouble. 2017, we see it in the killing fields, and we see it in the manner in which the campaigns have been happening. Maybe not the leaders, but certainly the supporters have been quite divisive in the way that they're behaving. So the question now becomes, whose fault is it that the party has become so divided? I'm looking to you as the leadership. You needed to manage this. Have you failed?
No, I wouldn't say we have failed, but I think we must all take responsibility for what happens in the organization. If at the moment we have you know, divisions that are showing in public, but we believe that those divisions have to be managed. Some of them arise from the way we manage issues. Some of them are not as fundamental and ideological as to really call them fundamental differences. So these are issues of how we're managing issues, and so I think they can still be managed and contained. But yes, if you look back over the years, there are tendencies that we have identified that are creeping into the organization that we need to uproot, and we've said so, and all that we need to be able to do is to ensure that as the conference comes, it addresses all those issues and we uproot the causes of the divisions. But the ANC has not always been a divided organization, but the differences of opinion are allowed in the organization. So it's a matter of the degrees of the differences. Right now, I think we're having quite a lot of things with the court cases and so on. I think that we need to do a lot more to actually contain this and bring back party discipline, and also deal with the issues that fundamentally create differences among the members that are not well settled within the party.
Well, you've talked about court cases, and I suppose for many they might be wondering, how is it possible that you can be confident this conference can go ahead? The Free State is facing a court bid on Thursday to prevent all of their delegates arriving at conference. How do you overcome this, and are you happy that you've done enough that the will of the people will be seen at conference?
Well, in the last conference in 2012, we had some court cases already at that time. Even Free State was involved. Sometimes when you get that situation, you have to find ways to mitigate against it. And so certain decisions were to be taken by conference to avoid the issue of the court case spilling into the conference, and it was successfully managed. Now, this time around, we're dealing with the issues ahead of conference. I think what we need to call for is calmness amongst all the leaders, is also to be able to say, let's seek solutions to the genuine problem that create the disputes and then deal with them, but also let's find a way of how can members find each other to be able to resolve these issues such that when we go to conference, we don't have to have standoffs, we don't have to have the court issues that are arising. If you go to conference, there will always be enough mistakes, there are enough issues, there are enough disagreements. It doesn't mean that the absence of those is what we'll need before you get to the conference. It's a management of those issues. As long as we understand each other, that we're trying to build the organization, and we must find a way to resolve the problem, listen to each other. What is it that makes others to make a dispute, and how are the processes followed to resolve those disputes? And if those are not satisfactory actually done, then we need to attend to that. If they have been done, we need to also persuade each other to say, look, this is how far we've taken the issue. So when we go to the conference, there can be any kind of reason why people might want the conference not to proceed, but we need to persuade each other because it's all in our interest to go into a successful conference, orderly conference, and a conference that would unite all the members of the ANC.
So we have a situation where Mpumalanga says there's a unity, delegates that are coming through. We have a situation where Premier S. Makashule says that Cyril Ramaphosa and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma must sit down together and come up with a common position before conference. All of these things speak to threats. How do you react to Ace Makashule in saying that these people must come together before the conference and come up with a common position?
No, I agree with him. I think that everybody must engage. We must talk to each other, and all the candidates and all those who support them, all the lobby groups, all the structures, we must talk, because the only way you're going to find a solution is when we talk. At the end of the day, it's not so much, the wafa contest that is important. What is important for us is to be able to get something that says this is the kind of leadership that we can work together with, that we can lead with. It must be fairly inclusive of all, so that it can unite all the different strands of the organization. If you get that leadership, you can discuss, sit down, and actually reduce the tension, so that even if there's a contest, it's minimized, so that everybody understands it's all about democracy. It's not about one group must destroy the other and so on. It's not a place of war. That conference is for building the ANC. It's not about people going there as enemies. It's about people going there as comrades to build, unite, and make sure that the ANC emerges with a much better image. Sometimes the excitement of election needs to be managed better, and therefore in this case, I think that it's still possible.
Are you happy with the process of making sure that the persons who are meant to be at conference will be there, and that the delegates themselves will represent their provinces, and that the integrity is not compromised by things like bribes?
Firstly, the bulk of the branches have gone through without a lot of problems, but there are instances where there could either have been mistakes or people would have started mischief, and we don't deny that those things will happen. And when they happen, the members who are affected must raise them, and must raise them persistently and consistently, so that they are resolved. And we must continue to deal with them until everybody is resolved. Now, the issue of bribes and so on, you can hear those kinds of allegations. What my real source of hope is the fact that if you talk to the members of the ANC, ordinary members and general delegates, you will find that their desire to emerge with a strong African National Congress, with a united party that is renewed, that solves a lot of its problems, is much stronger than any amount of money you can give anyone. So if somebody gives somebody money, well, that's probably their own issue. But if you look at the bulk and the average member of the African National Congress, their main interest is the passion they have for the ANC, and they want to get it solved. You will not find a majority of people in the ANC who will say, give us the money, we can live with leaders that are not inspiring, that you don't like. You'll not have that. So I think that I'm not worried about that. I think we must expose it, though, if we find it, and deal with those who are involved.
KZN, we go back there again. PEC had a meeting. Your reflections on what's come out of that?
You're talking about the Provincial General?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, the Provincial General meeting was about discussion of documents. It was about receiving the branch nominations. It was about, robust engagement. I would say it was just one of those meetings that was happening all over the country. So I don't have anything new that I think would have come from that meeting, other than the fact that all those members would have really wanted to express their views in terms of what impact they would like KwaZulu-Natal to make in there. I think what's important for KwaZulu-Natal is to say we recognize that there are certain divisions there, and that those tensions, we need to find ways to manage them, so that when they get into conference, they are not a factor, but rather the preferences, the different preferences are understood, and that the different views on whatever issues don't cause a conflict that can spill into the conference.
And that was the ANC General Treasurer, Zweli Mkhize, on the state of the ANC's preparedness ahead of this weekend. It's a very crucial one, the most anticipated National Elective Conference. Now, in the build-up to the ANC Elective Conference, SABC News will host the ANC Top 6 each and every night. And tonight, we'll be speaking to the ANC Deputy Secretary General, Jesse Duarte, at 7 p.m. on Channel 404. Our sister radio stations here at the SABC will all carry them, Shlobo Nkosi as well as Ikukwezi. The interview with the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, from 6 to 7 p.m. this evening. Meanwhile, Metsi Maholo is expected to elect a mayor and speaker if the political parties involved reach an agreement. The highly contested Metsi Maholo municipality in the Free State continues to remain a hung council following the by-elections where there's no outright winner. We will later cross to our reporter Ntakwana Ngatani on the latest. That's where we got to leave it. We'll take a short break, and after that, it's time for your sports news.
Yes, sir.
Nagedi Matthews Posa is an attorney, politician and anti-apartheid activist. He was the top MK leader operating out of Mozambique in the 80s. One of the first 4 members of the ANC to enter South Africa from exile in 1990 in order to start the process of negotiation with the National Party government. Posa was head of the ANC's legal department. He often tussled with the apartheid lawmakers over the investigation into the death of Chris Hani. During his time in office, he pioneered planning interactions between the private sector and government. He also spearheaded Nelson Mandela's reconciliation initiatives between the government and the Afrikaans-speaking community. Former Premier of Mpumalanga and former member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Posa published a volume of poetry called Deur die Oog van 'n Held in 1996. Posa received an Afrikaans award from ATKV.
The ANC is a democratic organization. These nominations indicate that character of the ANC. I said on one of your mediums that the more the merrier, because if there's no competition for those positions, then we're imposing leadership on the branch of the ANC. It's very, very important that the branch of the ANC must express their views in line with the ANC being a democratic organization.
Together we rise.
Well, welcome back. It is time for the sports. You are watching Newsroom. The time has just hit, let's see, 24 minutes before midday. Now, we start off this bulletin by telling you about how South African under-20 men's football side, Amajita, came back from a goal down to beat Egypt 2-1 in their final match of Group B. With this particular win, Amajita secured themselves a spot in the semi-final of the 2017 COSAFA Cup. They expected to play the best runner-up on Thursday. Now, Amajita finished the round-robin stage top of Group B, having won all 3 of their matches. They joined East African guest nation Uganda in the semi-finals of the 2017 COSAFA Cup. Now, South Africa's opponents, just to remind you, is said to be the best of the runners-up from all 3 groups. Now, talking about youngsters and how they fare on the playing field, the Discovery Walter Sisulu Challenge, or also known as the WSC, is an annual tournament that takes place in Soweto in December over a 3-week period. This happens at the Nike Training Center in Pimville, Soweto. Now, this year, 2017, marks the 15th year of this particular challenge, and the event is seen as a breeding ground for the showcasing and development of up-and-coming local soccer stars. Now, with me, as I promised you a little earlier, is the Discovery Walter Sisulu Challenge tournament spokesperson, Brafil Mokhodi, who's also the president of the Soweto Football Association. So, good morning to you, and thank you very much for being patient and joining us at this hour.
Good morning, sir.
Brafil, here's a question for you. A lot of times we talk about Discovery Walter Sisulu Challenge. We don't realize that it's set in stone now. It's going into its 15th year. I mean, the journey itself must have been quite interesting. Lots of challenges, lots of milestones in themselves. Please tell us a little bit about that journey and what has inspired you to keep it going for so long.
It's been a good journey. Looking back where we come from with the guys, I mean, most of the team that I've got, the management, where we started with, you know, Pramike has been behind the closed door. Wupito Misimani. People must know these things. And when we started with the 12 teams, it came, we went to the fund with the same sponsorship with Discover World, Health, and also bringing clinics on board. And that time, Nike have not come on board with us. They only came during the 2008 and built the facility 2009. Then we start growing, the tournament started growing, and we've seen through that, I think one of the best players that came from this project was Tulani Serrero. At the age of 17, was now a first team player at Ajax Cape Town. And those are some of the good things that we have seen. And we start working harder and focusing on the bigger picture of football development and making sure that you were looking only on the player side, but it was important for us to look at also the referees and the coaches and administrators. And when I started working with my guys, I said, guys, it's important that because only players, the player, if you don't have a good coach, you won't have a good player. If you don't have a good referee, the good game can't play. If you don't have a good administrator, you won't have good plans. So all these things becomes and condense them and make them one, and that's where the project is today.
Now, you talk of Tulani Serrero, who we all know plays for Ajax Amsterdam now. We know that he's had 1 or 2 issues with the national side, depending on who the coach is. But we also have the Sifiso Moyenis, the Tulani Hlatshwayos, and the Opamanyis, who've also come through your ranks. Yes. It really has become a breeding ground for top-notch talent. Yeah,
I mean, if you look at those players that you're just talking about, them, mainly Manyesa, the goal that he scored, it was not captured. I don't know why. From the center, he scored the goal to the best keepers. And from that time, Jesse Quinn was there, and Orlando Pirates just see a jam on him, and he went to play for Orlando Pirates. He never played for any academy. From that street football in a way to professional ranks. And these are things that we are saying we can do better. We just spoke about Lion Foster. He played 2 years. Who's he today? He came second half, he scored 2 goals against Amajita. Who's the coach there? Tabos no. He never coached, he never played professional football. From this project, from Soweto Football Association, he's a professional coach today.
Let's talk a little bit about Thabo Sinoe. He's got a bit under the radar because when people thought that when we changed coaches, national coaches, that he might be on his way out as well. But having said that, he's shown his mettle. I mean, Stuart Baxter left him out to dry once or twice, but he's shown his mettle. He's taken the under-20 side all the way to the semi-finals of the COSAFA Cup.
I think he's smart. He's one of the smartest coaches that we are having in South Africa. He's a good listener. He'll listen to every coach. I can tell you, even at SAFA there, he understands administration football, not only coaching. He understands the politics also. If you look where he come from the school, football, to where he is today, he worked hard for himself. He was not pushed. There were no favors. He worked hard to make sure that he coached under 17. He coached under 20. He even coached the under 23. He becomes coach assistant to Shakes Mashaba. He was doing the work for Shakes Mashaba. He can illustrate. He can put things in front of the players that players can listen. He is a good coach. Today, I mean, even Stuart Baxter, I can tell you, he relies on Thabo Sinoe for most of 99% of talking to the players because he understands the Kasi football and the mentality of players.
We've been running a question today, talking about how Amajita, how well they've done, 3 out of 3. They beat Egypt, came back from a goal down, beat Egypt, a very formidable side. With Zambia out, the whole Zambia out is now open for everyone. 2-1. Amajita won. They're through to the semi-finals. And we've been asking our viewers today, does this mean that the future of Bafana Bafana is looking bright, it's in great hands? And we've had varied responses. Some of them really being about, it's too early to say. Some of them are saying that, yes, definitely Bafana looking good, but a lot have been saying that they look good now, but they're going to disappear into thin air as soon as they need to get into the senior sides. What has your experience been with regards to that? Because too many people say that, off and on air, for that to be a figment of the imagination.
I think if we can keep to our vision at SAFA, the Vision 2022, then after that we build the Vision 2029. We should not lose focus. You must mix your long-term and the short-term plans so that you are able to reach your goals. For now, I can tell you, the players that are playing, he's been working hard with Shakes Mashaba, remember, then he is working with Stuart Baxter. You look at the players that are playing in national team Bafana Bafana, the under 23. Now we can't wait for FIFA to give us the date of Olympics. We must start now. You look at our national under-17. He took them and the other coaches to Chile. He take the under-20 to World Cup. All these things, it's a work of a collective. But I can tell you, yesterday, if the score was 2-1, I think what he said to the players, I know him. He said, guys, what must I say when we go back home? I can tell you, he didn't coach them and just confuse the players. He just motivated them about the country, how it is important to work for the country. And you look at the players that have come through from him, that have now playing in even professional players today. He's doing well. I mean, Molapo at Kaizer Chiefs, the players that have worked with him at the junior ranks, they're doing well in PSL today.
Bro, Phil, one of the things really that also keeps coming up is how we've been rebuilding. We've had several plans, several visions that we've come through. They look really good on paper. They look well thought out. Having said that, how long can we rebuild for?
You need a good leadership. You know, this thing of chop and change of the leadership, one man comes and you want to start from the scratch. That's the thing that is killing us in South Africa. There's no continuity. I think the current executive of SAFA have tried to say, let's continue. Let's stop, change. Even Stuart Baxter, I think he have not come with a new model for himself that will only suit himself. When he goes, then the next coach comes and you need continuity. You need to, you know, in a way, pass the baton. Don't stay there and think that things will just happen. There's no manna from heaven in this world. We have to work as a family.
But Phil, back to the Discovery Challenge in closing, just a couple of things. I understand the prize money is nothing to blink your eyes at. It's actually quite substantial. Can you tell us a little bit about the prize money and also how people will be able to access the grounds?
Now, obviously, before I talk about the prize, one of the key is we have increased the team from 56 to 64. And one of the keys that the team, I've had a meeting with the teams and the coaches to say, they must understand that they're not playing for themselves, they're playing for the community. The community have embraced the tournament. They must try to the best of their ability to play the good football, the coaches, and it's good to see that we're getting there. I mean, about the prize money, thanks to Discovery for putting that 100,000 on top. It's a cherry on top. Let's hope that the best team will win.
Yeah, no, fantastic. I'm looking forward to it. And once again, congratulations for getting the tournament into this stage. It's 15 years running. It's successful, coming up with really talented football players. Let's hope that Vision 2022 and going forward, they all get met. And we actually start competing and being as good as we can be on the continent and the rest of the world.
Yeah, I'm growing. You can see I'm aging, and I hope that they'll be in 5 years. We just signed a new contract with Discovery that will be starting next season.
Yes.
Another 3 years until 2018. We thank Discovery for believing in us.
That's a definite vote of confidence right there from a blue chip company saying yes, this Walter Sisulu Challenge run by Phil Mohodi, the tournament spokesperson as well as president of the Soweto Football Association, along with others, is something to look into and to keep going. Now, Egypt star Mohamed Salah has won England's prestigious BBC African Player of the Year award, rewarded for a 2017 packed with sparkling displays for Liverpool, Roma and his national team. The 25-year-old fired Egypt to the final of the Africa Cup of Nations and almost single-handedly took Egypt to their first World Cup final since 1990, scoring 5 and setting up 2 other goals in their qualifying campaign.
Well deserved. It's a fantastic prize for a pretty good player, to be honest.
Thank you. Mohamed, what does it feel like winning this award?
Yeah, I'm very happy to win this award. You know, it's a special feeling for me, and I would like to win it also next year.
Now, Salah, of course, joins African legends such as Ivorian duo Didier Drogba and Yaya Toure, the latter who's won it twice, as well as Liberian striker George Weah in winning this prestigious award. Now, on to a sport of a different kind. Now, esports or video gaming is set to become a $1 billion global industry by the year 2019. And South African gamers are quickly joining their overseas counterparts. It produces sports personalities of a slightly different kind.
Breeding a new kind of champion athlete. The video gaming industry already generates revenue that amounts to well over 9 billion rand, and its awareness is growing exponentially at a rate of more than 21% each year. Motor skills, hand-eye coordination and decision-making are just some of the skills that are developed by professional gamers. And with possible millions at stake in some competitions, it's easy to see why people have taken to the sport.
The athletes of the future, as I like to call them, maybe not everyone. A lot of people still don't consider esports real sports, but we've seen with the prize pools, it's definitely something that will be adopted globally going forward. I mean, we've already seen that Olympic committees are starting to look at it very, very seriously, adopting it into the Olympic Games. So it's going to be taken as seriously as something like athletics. Who knows, the next Usain Bolt could be, you know, a 19-year-old playing a computer game.
The fact that many popular competitions take place online gives South Africa's top gamers a chance to compete with the world's best, but at somewhat of a disadvantage.
Yes, online makes accessibility quite easy. The downside is because we're so far away from the rest of the world, we've got quite high latency, or ping times as we call them. So from your action to what happens on the screen, there is a slight delay, and that often puts South Africans at a disadvantage when there's online tournaments being played against the rest of the world.
Esports also transcends age, race and gender, as the competitors are only as good as their individual capability.
It doesn't know age, it doesn't know gender, it doesn't know race. There's no political lines that need to be drawn when it comes to esports, because you're an avatar online, you're an alias, you're a bunch of pixels essentially. So if you're good enough, you can compete on the highest level regardless of age, as long as your parents give you consent, of course.
Dota 2, or the Defense of the Ancients 2, is one of the most popular games in the world, with more than 10 million players in 2015 alone. The prize pool in this year's Global Championship was over $24 million, with the winning team of 4 players walking away with a cool $11 million US. Samantha Mari, SABC News, Johannesburg.
I'll tell you what, you know, it's all very interesting, all very exciting, and it's something that you can look forward to. 2019 is and 2018 are years where everything technological and innovation-wise gets into the mainstream, and it starts with things like this, e-gaming. Thanks very much for having joined us. My name is Kendall Makamate. I will be back tomorrow morning. You're watching Newsroom. Stay close and stay informed.
Do you have a funeral policy?
No matter the sacrifices you've made or the hours you've worked, you can't always say yes. AVBOB's Cashback Funeral Plan not only provides funeral insurance for your family, it also helps you to say yes to life's little extras more often. Because for every 5 claim-free years, you'll get your 5th year's premiums based on your monthly premium value paid back in cash. SMS Cash 1 to 41790 at no cost, and we'll call you. AVBOB, we're here for you.
If you want an AVBOB representative to contact you, SMS Cash 1 and your name to 41790.
Climate change. It is normal for the weather to be severe. We have had instances of catastrophic weather. There are recordings of extremes that date back to the 1600s, like the grapefruit-sized hail in France. However, in South Africa, we have mostly experienced floods, droughts, and strong winds. All these extreme weather events are normal and always expected to happen time after time. Our beautiful planet has been warming up